So this idea that it's all on the people for not having the skills, or that it's the people's fault making $7.25 an hour, let's not forget the fact that your government hollowed out these jobs. And I also got to go back to the start here where Patrick David says this.
What percentage of Americans do you think are willing to work that hard as you? Not that many.
He's basically framing this issue saying, look, CEOs are supposed to make a bunch more because they're the ones that work the hardest, they're the ones that work the longest hours. Let's think about this logically. If you're the CEO, you have ownership of your company. You probably should work more hours than the guy who doesn't have ownership and might be getting paid $7 an hour, $15 an hour, even $20 an hour. He doesn't have a stake. He doesn't have ownership. He's not going to be able to get the lion's share of the profits if he contributes millions of dollars to the company. So of course they're not going to work as hard as the CEO.
Rob, what's the least amount you ever got paid?
To calculate, it'd be annually $22,000 a year.
So 22,000 divided by, divide four, and how many hours a week were you working, Rob?
40.
50.
Okay, do 50 times 50 is 2,500. Do 22,000 divided by 2,500. $7, $8, and 8.8.
Yep.
So what do you make 8.8 right now?
No.
Did you ever think you're going to make the kind of money you're making right now?
Not when I was making $22,000 a year.
Right. So, but when you came here, and all of a sudden you're like, well, we can really build something special here, right?
Correct.
But why do we pay you that? Why do we pay whatever the number you know? Why do we pay you what we pay you?
Experience, hard work, what I can do in the future. A combination of all three things.
Great, but have you earned it?
Yes.
If somebody
Still earning it though.
I know you are.
What Patrick's doing here is what he's going to do again in just a minute. He's basically saying, look, if here's a model, if it worked for one person, then it can be true of everybody else. But I think what Patrick fails to take into account here is that the American economy as a whole is taking a hit, right? Wages are down, especially when you
The whole American lexicon crawls from a quadriplegic person in a wheelchair all the way through to like Usain Bolt or whatever. I mean, Usain Bolt, I don't think is from America, are they? I don't know. I don't remember. But like, but all the way through to like Peyton Manning or whatever, winning the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. We have everything in between, and so they all need love, all of them. All their lives are sacred. There's no reason why any Americans should be poor.
Inflation, real wages are down for workers.
We make so much money just so the rich people can steal it. It's so fucking stupid.
CEOs are getting paid more than ever before. In fact, what I'm going to show you here is a graph over time of how much CEOs in America are making compared to the
That's ridiculous. Why? We should just all make really make like a lot, you know?
And what you see is that workers' wages were growing in line with CEOs for quite a while, but there's starting to be a giant gap developing between how much CEOs are getting paid and how much workers are getting paid. So this idea of there's no systemic problem and, hey, I can point to certain people and say, hey, they got their skills up, they earned more, you're ignoring the broader economic trends.
Somebody right now paid you $7.25. Would you take it?
No.
Why though?
Because I've gotten to a place where my hard work is deserved to be rewarded.
That's right. And guess what? Do you if right now this doesn't work yet, do you have options?
Yes.
But you like being here.
Love it.
Of course. So that's the part. So for me, I have to realize I got to take care of the guy. And then for him, guess what he's got to realize? He's got to bring value. And that's the part when I hear that message sometimes, I'm like, okay, I get it, $7.25. They don't have to say yes to it.
That's nuts. People don't have to say yes to minimum wage. Okay, the problem is that jobs have been evaporating in America. There's less competition for employers trying to get workers than there was before. There's less jobs for workers to be selected between. Why is that? Because again, CEOs have teamed up with government. There's a large monopolization of the private sector in America, where all of this money is going towards the top, which means that there's less competition on the lower side and the middle side of business. And so a lot of jobs are moving overseas due to economic policies of the government, due to policies that are perpetrated by a lot of companies that benefit from having cheaper labor. So to look at this and just say that they don't have to say yes to this is kind of disingenuous, right? Like
It's the average fiscal conservatives bullshit
that have to take jobs that they don't want. I know a lot of them because that's the best opportunity in front of them, and they have to try and pay at least some of the bills. So when you look at $7.25 an hour, I'm not necessarily advocating for a higher minimum wage, but to just look at it and go, well, it's the people's fault. They need to learn more skills, kind of ignores all of the systemic trends that people like this in big business have allowed to happen in America through lobbying, that our government has allowed to happen through poor policy.
You know, if you look at the disparity in wealth between black people and white people, I mean, it's kind of huge. And, you know, I mean, the whole country was, you know, it goes back generations.
You're comparing today to the 50s. This is a very different America. I mean, I understand. So the part that I truly want to sympathize with you and empathize with you and understand is the life you've lived. I've not lived your life. So I can't sit there and put myself in your shoes and say, well, you know what? I understand why you have the certain feelings that you have. We all have our own set of stories.
Why do you guys always look like suit
you
dummies?
didn't have enough money where your parents could finance it because you guys had to take a $5 ice cream course to learn how to do this. So it's not like your parents gave you $200,000 to start a business with. Now bring it to me. So now how about me? I wasn't born here, right? My parents got a divorce. My dad was a cashier at a 99-cent store. I go in the military and I get out. I had a 1.8 GPA in high school. I'm planning on staying in the military for 20 years.
You had a 1.8?
Should I?
Why the fuck am I listening to you then? You're a goddamn moron.
Hello everyone and welcome.
I'm sorry, is that dismissive? I think my mother taught me to be like this. It's annoying. I'm just dismissive. If the person sounds like a moron and looks like a moron, then it must be a goddamn moron.
The Wolfszeit channel. Today with a very special.
Like sits there and he's like, I had a GPA of 1.8. Even my idiot friends didn't have a GPA that low. You're a goddamn moron. I mean, like how's? I mean, what were you smoking crack? I mean, like, how did you get a 1.8 GPA? I mean, that's, to me, I don't know. I'm just gonna say a 1.8. A 1.8. I don't think I've ever been lower than a 2.9. I don't know. And I failed the 8th grade, I think. Well, I mean, I guess in the 8th grade, I suppose I probably had a lower than that, 2.9, you know, because I skipped so much school. But like, yeah, I've had a lower GPA than that in the 8th grade, I guess. But I mean, like, you're talking about, like, you're not talking about the 8th grade. You're talking about, like fucking, like, college?
Topic, I mean,
or high school, I don't know.
Always special. It's not new info that special moves will come to the game, like for example a berserker 360-degree attack with your axe, or I don't know, shooting 2 arrows and stuff like that. But I guess in combination with all the clades and the mastery system, this is a little bit overwhelming for some maybe, and some are very concerned about the combat changes, that they maybe can't play like they used to play. And the spinning in combat is also an immersion breaker for a lot of people who want to starting out in the game, who looking on YouTube for the PvP videos and see people spinning like prima ballerina.
They're like, what?
And
that's
of course,
bullshit.
People are asking for a combat like in, for example, Kingdom Come.
Like Skyrim. No, I don't want combat like Kingdom Come at all. I want combat like Skyrim.
Deliverance, you can see here. Of course, this is a single player offline game, so making that possible in Mortal Online would be, I don't know, would be near impossible. But it remains a dream of a lot of people in their heads, and they have the imagination of that this will be possible.
I like the combat system. It's good, but it needs to be a little faster.
That will ever be possible in an MMO, but if Mortal Online 2 would be the first of that, would be awesome. but alone with the delay and the one server solution, this is not possible. And on the other hand, people think that the new combat mechanics and special moves will bring a lot more variety to the game. to the combat. This can be true. My only concern is that it maybe looks like this: an overloaded shit UI with unnecessary skills and bullshit buffs, and I don't know. That is why I'm playing a Thurza, and that is why I'm playing Mortal Online. Not because I'm a toolbar clicker and I want to have 5 special effects on my skill moves.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no.
I don't know. This is just my personal opinion. You can have a different, of course. But I
Yeah.
hate the idea of active skills. I just
Yeah.
fucking hate it. 1 or 2 skills is okay, but like more of 2
Yeah, like,
skills.
I think
no,
it-
no.
about
And I hope
6
that the
6
Mortal
is pretty
Online
good.
UI will never be overloaded.
Like New
by all the
World,
shit games
I think New World did it perfectly. Like 3 abilities on each weapon, 2 weapons. I think that was actually perfect.
there. I mean, I just imagine when I'm around with my group, we are going into a dungeon, and everyone is like, "Oh no, wait! I need to buff that. I need to do that. I need to do that skill.
Yeah, like,
oh, now
what?
we have the time. Now it's the time window.
Yeah,
for
like I think the game's far too slow.
that." And then when you fuck it up, you have to explain to your group why you haven't made the skill in the right turn, right thing or something like that. The perfect example is if you, for example, making a skill that the Thurza can make a 360 attack and attack 4 players at once or something like that. Then this skill is so necessary to have as a Thurza that you can
Yeah.
only play a Thurza with this skill. It's not an optional thing. It's like the blood steal. Every Thurza has skilled the bloodsteel, of course, because without you would be fucking useless. So you force a player more or less to play like that to be competitive in PvP. And I just hate the whole idea of that completely. But that
Yeah,
is
me
completely
too.
okay, because your opinion can differ. It's just my personal opinion here. But my personal opinion, of course, don't matter, and this is good. Because the only thing that matters is the opinion of us all, and that is why we ask Henrik in the stream about the new combat changes and the new combat mechanics. So here's a quick summary to that.
You mentioned a combat rework as one of the sprints that you're kind of wanting to do. I imagine that also includes like weapon special abilities, but would there be anything else included in that you may have not mentioned?
So with combat focus, we have a few things that players have suggested. I mentioned a bit before, like options, right? Legacy options with disabling some of the queuing actions. Got a lot of feedback on that now when people have played around with it. So a few options there that a lot of people have suggested that we can add so people can find their perfect setup to how they want to fight.
I think Mortals should rip off New World. I think it would make the game much better. Make it faster. These mobs take too long to die. There's like kind of I don't know. The game's a little too like fancy, in my opinion. And I like that slow combat because it feels like very, very effectful. But I feel like the gap between a skilled player in Mortal and a non-skilled player in Mortal is so vast that the two shouldn't ever meet, kind of. It's sort of weird, but it's weird. The skill level is so different. They're like jump spin shopping at you. And you're like, what the fuck? I'm used to Skyrim. What the fuck are you doing? You're off on some crazy Mordau trip. Like, looking like you've been playing these fucking weird, like, these multi-directional games for fucking like 20 years and shit, and we're staring at you, and there is some kids like that are like, oh man, look at this Chivalry 1, Chivalry 2 Mordau dude who's been playing Mortal forever. And you're like, oh man, like that guy's so skilled or whatever, right? And you're like, oh man, that is actually one of the higher skill ceilings, yeah. But then you feel some shame that some multi-directional dude is slaughtering you, which I don't think is very cool. Because you know what we all grew up on. It's like Fortnite, Minecraft, World of Warcraft, and like Skyrim, and like, a few others like Counter-Strike and stuff, Rust and stuff, and Apex and Valorant and shit. That's the shit that we grew up on. Like, Call of Duty, right? That's the shit that we grew up on. Nowhere in there, it maybe Tenshu and Elden Ring, right? Like, nowhere in there is like truly, really deeply skill-based, directional-based combat. So like when someone who's new goes up somebody who's like a super skilled Mortal person who can't spin shop you, that's one of the things that makes Dark and Darker so good, is like when you're on a warrior and you freak out and there's like some melee on you and you're like, fuck that, spin shop, and you'll cleave the guy down. You will. And that's the problem. That's why Dark and Darker is literally more fun to play than goddamn Mortal 2, which is just dumb. So yeah, they should embrace like kind of like a New World skill set where I can like kind of spin shop somebody, and so no, they don't really want to engage me in a 1v1. No, not unless they're coming to spin shop me, and then we get a 50-50, right? That's how good PvP is. Like, sure, he can come and try spin shop me if I get to spin shop him. But, like, that's not how Mortal's Kombat currently plays out. Where it's like, dude's been playing this for way longer. Maybe you've been playing a little while too, but it's like, you know, this dude's been playing it way longer. He's fencing you because he's dueled for like 300 hours or something against somebody else, and he knows. He, like, knows what you're going to do. He's moving behind you, trying to gouge you in the back and shit, and he's playing a totally different metagame than you, because you're just trying to learn the game. This guy is playing, like, some fucking weird, crazy, min-maxed meta. And this is one of the problems of PvP. Like, say what you say about EVE Online. The base game is control click something and press F1, you know? That's the base game. That's all it is. And so then you sit and wait. And sure, maybe your positioning and the way that you play your hockey puck is a little bit better. So you play like a little game of arcade game, hockey puck, where the guy's trying to tackle you or whatever. And yeah, it plays out a little bit more tactically and stuff. But what I must say is yeah, maybe his ship fucking owns you. But generally, you get your shot. You get your shot. You don't feel like you didn't get to press the F1. Like, oftentimes in this directional combat, you're like, oh my god, I'm dead before I can even do anything, and it's fucking dumb. That's how Rust feels too. And I don't know. I don't think like the Fortnite overshield is the solution to it. Oh god damn it, my pet died again. God damn it.
Approaching Stargate.
Fucking annoying. And so yeah, like New World felt good because you're like, oh, 3 abilities. That guy's got 3 abilities. Who uses the 3 abilities a little bit more strategically better? And it was a better vision. It's a better vision than what Henrik's trying to do. I wish he would simplify down to what feels like Skyrim combat, but it just feels like really weighty. One of the things about this game is that it feels really weighty when you hit. And so, like, but I don't know why it takes so long to kill anything. It's fucking dumb. The game is kind of a European grind fest, honestly.
And then
reminds me a bit of Risen. That can be kind of a grind fest if you play it the right way. It's like a kind of a European Risen game where like you have to do a lot to get anywhere. And so why does it take so long? It shouldn't take so long. And like, you should be able to kill something and, like, you know, right now it takes like 45 seconds or something, maybe a little longer, like 2-3 minutes. That's okay. It feels technical and good. Something about it feels wrong, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know which one we're pulling, so I'm scared. Oops. Thank you guys. Good night. Oh, did we stop? Oh, wow, I might actually get 75 in this party. Nice. Oh, we're 65 now, are we? I'm gonna piss on the next one.
The other bigger area that we are working a little bit in the background, but it's really, I said this before, this is
I will say Mortal is like the most immersive sandbox, I would say.
one of those things that we don't want to stress out.
Well, no, I don't know.
Feel,
Immersive.
somewhat okay, and have it on PTR, because then we are too far away of something we are fully happy with.
Immersive, I don't know. Immersive MMO, I don't know. I think that actually is Star Citizen still. I think Star Citizen immersed me the most any MMOs ever fucking actually immersed me. But there's no game there. It's just the orbital entry and orbital exit. That's always really fucking immersive. I guess, but Star Citizen is not an MMO, so yeah, I would say Mortal is like the most immersive one. EVE Online can really, really immerse you. When you're in a battle of 400 versus 400, that's the most immersion I've ever been in. I think if EVE Online is the most immersive.
We want to be closer to something that we feel we think it's awesome, it looks great, it feels great, but now we need everyone in the community to jump in, especially those that are good at fighting, right? We want to make sure they are useful, effective, and as balanced as possible without being too OP and so on. And we want to have, like, for every single weapon group, we want to make sure there's a baseline that are reliable, good for all styles, right? So we're probably going to start out with one per weapon group, and then we plan to do more. I have a list of 3 or 4 per weapon group. Like I said, we don't want to stress any of these one else. We want to make sure that if you commit to access, that those abilities should be reliable, balanced, useful in a exciting way. Same goes for every single weapon group: daggers, swords, and so on. So when we are at a certain points, when we're happy with that, that's when we're going to open up a certain PTR and let everyone in. That's going to be the only focus on that PTR, or main focus. Let's go through them all. We want to have them balanced, fun, and fully working. And when that is fully approved, we feel that, there can't be a time frame on this because it's so sensitive. After that, that's when we want to push that live as well. And of course, tight list, we've talked about this a lot. The reason we can't just prevent spinning, we're fully aware of the different opinions. Spinning may look silly, unpractical, and some people refuse to learn it. Some people are learning it. Some people think it's really cool. They think they're cool ninjas. We have the whole spectrum, right? And we fully agree with that. Everyone is right in those opinions, I think. But we also, I think the majority also understand that we can't just restrict now, because then we don't have duels anymore. But you can't practice that kind of normal.
It's a necessary evil. There's no other way to express skill within the game.
Yeah.
Without it.
Right, and everyone also are pretty much agreeing that it is a big difference when it comes to dueling or being out in a group fight, having a big war such. And obviously, a real war group fight, that is where we want it, to be as good as possible and make sure that works, it's fun and engaging. And I think also the majority are absolutely agree that a group fight is really good in Mortal Online. It's exciting, it's fun, and it really comes down to teamwork, player skills, and group colors. And if any of those components are low, the other side will win, right? It's so much player skills and knowledge here. So it really shines when it comes to that. And then, of course, when you go into one-on-one and such, it's a completely different fighting style. But like I said, it is necessary because you can't end a duel if you just restrict the spinning. But my hope is that along with these components and actions that we add, so you have new options when fighting one-on-one also, you have the ability to, or we want to restrict the spin, start clamping it, so it's not that crazy. So that's something.
As long as there's mechanics in place that allow people to punish and express skill in small scale and 1v1s, then you could totally introduce a turn cap. But until that happens, it can't be touched.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the reasons we don't want to touch the spin cap at this point, because it's not going to be a good thing, you know. People are enjoying dueling and practicing that, and they do learn a lot in general just by dueling, and a lot of people enjoy it and getting used to it. But yeah, it wouldn't be a thing at all if we just restrict the spinning, hiding your strikes and so on. So but like I said, it is absolutely open for the future when we're adding these new components and abilities, where we can rely more on utilizing that kind of content and less of the spinning, hopefully, I think. So that's something we have to see.
I mean,
sure.
and what is with the special moves for the bows and stuff?
For the bows, we have a few different ones. We have the names. I don't know the names yet, but obviously we have like quick shooting. You can shoot a few arrows very rapidly. We have split arrows where you can shoot multiple arrows, have a little bit spread of them.
Cool. Yeah, that's that. Those are good
we
ideas.
We also have a mechanic that we want to get working, and that is how you can actually parry with your bow. So you can actually be a little bit more useful in against someone that jumps you in melee. You don't just stand there with your bow out and are completely wrecked, but you can actually do some parrying and maybe even stab with an arrow. Not the most effective, obviously, competing with a melee fighter, but you should have some option at least to be more of a dedicated archer rather than not at all, right?
I mean, also speaking about archery, just one short question with the blunt arrow tips. Do you remember the blunt arrow tips from Mortal Online 1? This was also a big game changer for the archery in the game. Are you planning to add these arrow types again or not?
Yeah, we haven't done much in the archery department, and we do get a lot of requests that, you know, we should give it a little bit more love and options. So there's a little bit more options, pretty much, for those that want to play as a more dedicated archer. Now it's more like a secondary thing, right? And I would love to have that more as, you know, I want to be a ranger and a good archer and be that as my primary focus. So obviously there's multiple areas that needs to evolve to allow for that. Fletching, you know, building your arrows, specific effective arrows. We also have other components, poisoning, that are coming at some time. Also, we need to decide where it fits, where you can also apply specific types of poison or different effects on both blades, weapons, and tips of arrows. So this is also where daggers obviously gonna shine the most, because you can build specific daggers that are more weak spots. They don't do massive damage, but they really shine when it comes to deliver different types of dangerous poison and effects. So that I guess that fits more the assassin, poisonous, rogue assassin style of player. And you know, as you can see, is quite a lot on this list. We haven't gone through a lot of them, but which one do we want in the upcoming sprints? Similar like we did in the last voting sprints. For us, it's a big challenge. You know, we try to obviously see that there are some core pillars, foundation of the game that we all need and want, and you know, the whole population players will enjoy this kind of content. But then also every now and then it goes a little bit more narrow, but it could be a huge, you know, success that a lot of people really find some things enjoyable. So this is one of the challenges. How do we build the upcoming sprints? What do we want to focus on? What areas?
What about magic? Because I talk to my mages a lot, because I've never played mage, but I talk to like some very experienced mages and pick their brains about how magic works and stuff. There's apparently there's a lot of spells in the game that just don't really do anything. They are unused. They're completely ignored and are only used to level elementalism.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any plans on, making magic more interesting, making some of these spells more viable for mages so they have a more robust toolkit of spells that they can use?
Yeah. I think I have to admit that we almost overdid it a little bit when it comes to Elementalism Magic School. A lot of people enjoyed it and thought it was awesome, and it was one of those mechanics that a lot of people were asking for. A lot of people didn't want the hit traces. They want the real prioritize, right? And we said that is the school for that. All of those, if not all, is prioritize based and different effects.
So yeah, please leave your opinion about the upcoming combat changes. Because every one of us have concerns about the combat changes, I guess. The good thing is we can explore that on the PTR first and give Starwood feedback if the whole community is liking what Starwood is doing or not. So maybe it's a great chance to get more diversity, even more than the mastery system gave us, for the characters to make a better PvP, to have more fun in PvP, and maybe less ballerina spins. I don't know. But please leave your opinion in the comments, would be awesome.
Thank you, Wolfside. I've like and sub to your channel.
Every few helps really. And yeah, please leave a like and subscribe, ring the bell, and I totally forgot my text. Oh yeah, special thanks to all the supporters, of course. Carmel, Professor O, Paladin Life, Lucarol, Rodus, Partelax, Trumbulok, Giovanni Vargas, Real Metbush, Cyrus, Peter, you and all the others, of course. And never forget to move hard, be hard, party hard, make party hard. See you all next time. Goodbye.
It's expected that 600,000 people attended protests across the country today, gathering in every state for the hands-off rallies, including here in Vermont, despite the dreary weather. These protests are focused on opposing the policies of President Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Wow.
NBC5's Yunia Martinez spoke with demonstrators at some of the rallies today.
It's very scary.
We're saddened that we have to be out here.
If we're going to save our democracy, it's going to take the people.
Thousands across Vermont, reaching communities like Windsor and Chittenden County, gathered Saturday united in opposition to the policies of President Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
I applaud Hands Off and Indivisible and everybody who's coordinated. 1,300 demonstrations across the country.
The Hands Off rallies are part of a nationwide effort happening in cities large and small, with over a dozen rallies taking place here in Vermont.
Oh yeah.
What I see happening is that people are waking up. A whole lot of people coming out.
Thank you, my NBC. I'd like to sub to your channel.
We all want the same thing. We want to be able to raise our families and provide for them in a positive, nurturing environment.
From immigration to Social Security, federal workforce cuts to tariffs, protesters voiced their concerns on issues they say are hurting their future.
We've lost all our allies, and I think what's happening between Canada and the U.S. is deplorable. I think we have nobody in the cabinet that really understands what democracy is.
As the protests continue, some believe these rallies will only grow bigger.
I think as the Trump administration's disruptions grow wider, as they start attacking our economy, as they start threatening Social Security and Medicare,
as the Republicans start killing everyone,
I think more people are going to be coming out and joining.
In Burlington, Yunia Martinez, NBC5 News.
Sane, normal people, and then fiscal conservatives that wish to starve us to death and steal our money.
Happy Gilmore.
Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?
Oh, God, I love it. Yeah, this movie rules. Happy Gilmore is an underdog story about a young, emotional hockey player.
I get nervous about the movies.
I have a theory that the player of Elder Scrolls games inhabits the role of a dead god. And yes, I do mean the player, not the player character. That's an important distinction. Further, I'm not assigning player god status in a typical video game fashion, a Sims or RTS-like role of controlling the world and its outcomes. I'm saying the narrative within the Elder Scrolls series implies all this. Elder Scrolls games center prophecy in a few different forms, none more obvious and yet less clear or present than the titular Elder Scrolls themselves. The Elder Scrolls world hums with the background frequency of prophecy. It is a world of chosen ones. This is partly ironic to have so many fates foretold in a series most known for, if anything, character freedom. But often it is world events just as much as individuals that lay at the center of prophecy. In fact, the events of Oblivion were teased by a prophet in Morrowind. Morrowind opens with a prophecy about our character, but Oblivion opens with a prophecy about the fall of another. Skyrim winds into a wall that had foretold the events of the series, mentioning the core plots of each mainline game. And then there's the split off. Anything pre-Morrowind can be taken in a different light, in my view, in more than a few ways, but it's clear that the coalescence of design elements and world-building choices really firmed up with Morrowind. Prophecy does not shine onto the main plot of Daggerfall and only really holds a background place in some inciting incidents around a war over an island called Bethany, but suffice to say, we are going to stay away from Daggerfall for the most part, and Arena at this point exists to be retconned. The Elder Scrolls themselves only became objects of prophecy with later entries, not having a grounded meaning until after Daggerfall. Daggerfall did, however, introduce the concept of lore books, and with it, a world beyond what we see in-game, a world of theory and myth and history and theology, and you do know the theology of the Elder Scrolls world, right? Like the monomyth, the Et Ada, and Mantling, and the 8-in-1, and Incarnates, and
yeah,
let's
a little bit.
back up a bit. As an exercise in world building, because that's the real point, let's look at the mythology, or more so, theology of the Elder Scrolls world, culminating ultimately in my theory about the missing god. I wholeheartedly think learning about these things can deepen your sense of connection to the game world more than your average immersive jiggle physics mod. Naturally, the books and their stories are not necessary to play, but they're in the world for a reason. More so than most any other RPG series I've played, the Elder Scrolls games dedicate plenty of energy to the off-screen minor histories and worldly perspectives. This gives us a lot to play with when it comes to ourselves forming a perspective on this world and choosing what histories and stories and in-game theorists to listen to. But it can also be a lot. So even if you're a complete nerd lore head, this part might be good as a refresher because frankly, playing the games doesn't passively instill much of this lore. A TLDR of sorts exists in the games in the form of a book called The Monomyth. The gods of this world we play are known collectively as the Et Ada, which is not a term you'll hear while just playing the game. It's saved for the in-game books. In said books, the story deepens with explanations of other gods that aren't the subject of much worship and are more conceptual than figural, by which I mean that the gods people worship are understood as beings that exist within time, if not space, and with personalities and traits and depictions, where the parent generation is two gods, Anu and Padme, who represent the loose concepts of light and dark, everything and nothing, constancy and change. Not in a good versus bad way, but there are...
I don't care about this video game lore, unfortunately.
All right, joining us now is Christina Ramirez, president of Next Gen America, and Mara Gillespie, former advisor to former Representative Adam Kinzinger and Speaker John Boehner. First, I want to ask you, Christina, how big of an impact, if any, do you think these protests will have?
Thank you,
I know people have been frustrated, people have wanted to get out and do something, but will this actually have an impact on policy, or is it not necessarily about that?
Look, I think we've seen an unprecedented overreach, a power grab by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And ultimately, I think the only thing that's going to stop that is the power of the people demanding that government serve
power to the people, giving people the
and
power.
Stop slashing government, start making sure we protect Medicare, Social Security. People have been itching and desperate to show their muscle in the streets. I think this is going to energize progressives, Democrats, also independents that are incredibly frustrated and angry at what they're seeing. And that's why you saw over 1,200 events organized across the country. I think this is only going to build momentum to put pressure, not just on Donald Trump and Republicans, but we're seeing Democrats start to act like Cory Booker and other people speak up. They want the party to fight against Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And so I think that fighting spirit is just going to continue to grow with this.
Maura, how should Republicans perceive these protests? Because, you know, studies and polls are showing that pretty much across the board, most Americans are not on board with the tariff chaos. They're not necessarily on board with Elon Musk and his chainsaw approach to the federal government. Could these protests be hitting home and reaching across the aisle? And how should Republicans react to them?
Well, they certainly should be, and I don't think that they should be viewed as solely
Boston.
just as a Democratic movement. Because
oh yeah, Boston!
In reality, I do think
Go
a large
Boston!
Chunk of the American population is frustrated with both parties. We were let down this past election by both parties. The Democrat had too of an insular circle around Joe Biden and refused to see the reality on the wall there. And then, these parties are against Trump and Elon. Republicans who are more in the moderate space or are just level-headed, pragmatic thinkers should take an opportunity to step forward with a plan, because there's not necessarily a plan on the Democratic side. Yes, Cory Booker, what he did the other night, gave some galvanizing to the Democratic Party to say, okay, let's take a stand, but they have to be for something. Just being against Trump and against Elon, that's a start, but that's not going to win them an election. We've seen the anti-Trump rhetoric.
5K from 75. I'm going to get 75 BST.
I think it's an opportunity for Republicans to also recognize that their constituents are angry. This isn't going to impact Donald Trump. He's a lame duck president. It's not going to affect
dead
Elon Musk.
slot.
He's
a dead slot.
The people who are at risk here are the people who are sitting in the current seats in the House and the Senate, who are looking up ahead for re-elections. And
you know what I mean when I say dead slot? It's like it's a sports team, but there's like somebody out there and they're just eating shit out there. There's just a big turd out there. They're not moving around. They're not moving the ball. They're not working with the team. They're trying to take shots on their own and get their own personal fucking glory or whatever. And they're just looking like shit out there. So I call it a dead slot. It's like a dead slot. If somebody sits in the role, they're there. They talk to the media even like before and after the game. But I mean, they are dead slots. They don't really do anything,
term elections, they need to be concerned.
And the things they do, people don't like.
From Democrats this past week, you had the win in Wisconsin, you had Cory Booker's, we just mentioned this marathon filibuster, you've got protests today. But to Mara's point, Democrats have to be for something. They have to get their messaging together. Are you seeing some sort of solidification within the party? Do you think they're going to be able to do that?
Yeah, and I think Mara and I actually really agree. I don't think it's enough just to oppose Donald Trump and Elon Musk, that ultimately people voted for Donald Trump because they are in deep economic pain in this country. And what I see on both sides of the political aisle, people are fed up with what they see as legalized political corruption. And what we saw play out in our system in Wisconsin was Elon Musk pour millions and millions of dollars, and he still couldn't win that Supreme Court race. But ultimately, we have to get the influence of billionaires out of our political system, because it is clearly hindering our ability to wrestle with the big issues and economic issues of our time that Americans care about, of all political persuasions. The fact that we don't have universal health care, the fact that the majority of Americans don't have more than $1,000 in savings for an emergency. These are the reasons people are swinging from one party to the next, and ultimately who answers the deep economic pain of Americans will win their vote. I think Democrats have better prescriptions, but one thing that I think really failed in 2024 was Harris not speaking enough to the economic pain and conceding the economy to the right. We should never concede the economy to the right. We have real prescriptions to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, to protect unions, to tax the rich. These are all incredibly popular policies. We need to own them and run on them and not hide from them.
Mara, on a slightly different note, we were just talking to Peter Baker and our other panelists about this, but a White House official told the Washington Post that Trump is, quote, at the peak of just not giving an F anymore. The hit to the economy, the backlash to Musk and all of the cuts. Do you think any of this will face him? And do you think Republicans, those people you were just talking about, moderate Republicans, level-headed politicians, will start to speak up more given the pushback they're seeing from the public at large?
They should, because Donald Trump does not care what happens necessarily to the economy. He's not going to be impacted when you can't buy bananas at 49 cents anymore. That's not going to impact him, right? That's not going to impact somebody like Elon Musk. They don't feel the same that everyday voters feel, right? That's not their top concern. And like I mentioned before, he's a lame duck president, so it's not as huge of an impact. But Republicans who are in their seats right now, and again, I also don't think that the president necessarily cares whether or not the people keep their seats or not. What he cares about is when they go against him, when they speak out against him, when they stand in his opposite, in his way. Rand Paul joining with Tim Kaine this week on the Senate floor, opposing the tariffs on Canada. That to him, that's going to bother him. And so there is an opportunity here. And I think a lot of it does happen behind the scenes, people expressing frustrations, although I do think a lot of it falls on deaf ears. But that's going to be, tactic one would be to talk behind closed doors. Try and get someone who has his ear to say this is a real problem for our reelection, for you to have any say, as far as having majorities in Congress. And then secondarily, speaking up and out. because they're the ones whose election and their jobs are on the line, not the president's.
You know, I say this all the time. There are so many people here in Washington making policy who have never had the experience of getting to the cash register at a grocery store and having to put something back, right? And those are the people that are going to get most impacted by all of these policies. Christina, I also want to ask you about a federal judge has ordered that the Maryland man who was accidentally sent to a jail in El Salvador, Kilmar Garcia, be returned to the U.S. by Monday. Now, J.D. Vance has accused him of being a member of the MS-13 gang and involved in human trafficking, even though Garcia doesn't have a criminal record. The White House is saying they can't get him back in time. What has been the most striking part of this whole saga to you, either with this individual case or how these cases are playing out overall?
Well, I think this case speaks to just the whole process being one that is so dangerous for all people, like whether you're an undocumented immigrant or a U.S. citizen, or like this man that had temporary protective status and had no criminal record and was swept up into this. We have seen the Trump administration weaponizing the immigration system to usurp due process, and now calling for sending even American citizens, people that participated in vandalizing of the Tesla facility, saying they too should be sent to these gulag prisons where there is no due process in El Salvador. And so we're seeing Americans, I'm seeing Americans that actually have concerns and questions about undocumented immigration that may have voted for Trump, saying they don't like a system where there's no due process. And the real question is Trump in his administration going to defy the orders of a federal judge here? Because this is a litmus test. This is not just about immigrants or who's undocumented. If they can defy their rights and ignore a federal judge's orders, they will do that to legal permanent residents. They will start to do that to American citizens. It is a dangerous and slippery slope. So however you feel about immigration, you should be concerned, because this administration will turn around and weaponize a system without due process against anyone that opposes his administration.
Maura, I'd like to get your reaction to that and also ask you, you know, why doesn't the White House just ask El Salvador to send Garcia back? I mean, they're claiming the U.S. judge doesn't have jurisdiction over that country, but it was the White House who sent him there in the first place. The President Bukele is a big Trump fan. What is the motivation behind drawing this all out?
Well, if the lawyer for the DOJ in court yesterday couldn't explain why the president hasn't, or why the White House hasn't done it yet, I don't know that I could explain that.
Gonna ding 75, oh yeah. I'm gonna ding 75, I'm 2K away.
Either. But what I think this points to is the hypocrisy. If roles reversed, Republicans or MAGA voters would be furious about an overreach by the president.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think, again, as voters, taking a step back, not looking at it from a right or left lens, but looking at it from an objective lens, we would all do ourselves a great service by doing that more often and calling leaders from both sides of the aisle accountable for their playing on our emotions, playing on our fears like they have been, as opposed to taking a step back and looking at it objectively. And objectively, we know this is wrong, right? This goes against the Constitution, not to give due process. And so I have grave concerns as well. And I think I would hope that more of us will take this as an opportunity to look at it as humans, and not just look at it as the verbiage that the president likes to use. And again, what's right and wrong. Those are very basic tenets that we can all kind of look back on here.
Landed in the way. Now shake it off and begin moving. The sun is near. It will consume this place.
As the dev said, it's out with the old and in with the also old. You're gonna see a lot of familiarities from prior seasons. Pretty much all of the best parts from every prior season we've dealt with so far have been plucked out and implemented it in a better way. Let's start with the one that I know is going to bring most of you back to the game. The lobby's back. Not without a caveat though. The window to exit into the lobby has been shrunken down to a segment of the edge of said tile. When you go and open the map and you see the line for the panel, your exit window is about 2 quadrants wide. With that amount of space, that gives you ample room to be able to outmaneuver or outplay, or both, or whatever you want to call it, anyone who's trying to steal/camp the exits of the map. However, that's not your only way to store your walker. You could also transfer it to lobby like you used to be able to, or you could go to trade, and there's a walker packer station at trade station. And I found out if your walker is packed up inside the trade station packer and tile burns, it automatically goes to lobby. You are offered a free slot initially for that tile. Any slots after that cost 1,000 flots. Now, I don't know if they scale up the more you buy because I haven't bought any yet, so I'll probably be testing that here soon. So there's 3 ways for you to safely get your stuff off the map. On the subject of security, the PvP block zone around the trade station is now double the size, and the timer is 6 hours. The build block area around the trade station is double the new distance of the PvP block zone. So it's very unlikely for people to be able to really grief or camp the trade station, and we'll have a safe hub to do trade and whatnot. Grapple hooks no longer have a stam regen nerf, so when you're airborne and free falling, you regenerate stamina, so we're back to being able to swing around freely. However, when you use a wingsuit, it uses up stamina. But from what I've heard, wingsuits are kind of broken right now, and they're trying to figure out what broke it. We no longer have the stam regen nerf, but it's been replaced with a lockout on block nerf. That's a misleading term. It's pretty much lockout on any sort of damage or contact given in combat. So whether you block or take damage, you can't grapple for, I think, what seems like 3 seconds. It's just a few seconds and a means of mitigating rats. Now boiling down to what your loadout choice is and skill set. If you're running heavier gear, you're not going to move as fast, but you'll take more hits and hit heavier. If you're running lighter gear, you're not going to be able to do as much damage, one-handed weapons, but you'll move faster and have higher DPS. Hard points have been removed. players can once again build in any location. But that excites me, especially for those of you who remember my old build videos. Oh boy, are they back. I'm already started with the dinghy. I already found means of being able to solo on a dinghy. As long as you have a scatter and a couple of crafting stations, you're good. Not to mention the pilot control, the weaponry you can have on the ship. And now they have a new one that's going to be an anti-personnel turret, of which I've yet to see because I don't think I've progressed that far yet to build it, because it's probably an end game thing or mid to late game thing. However, you can have automaton and spinners and thumpers on your walker. Don't build the thumpers because we can't craft the ammo for it for some reason, and we don't know why, so it's just spinners right now. And speaking of Season 5 things, so they did away with hardpoints, right? Well, schematics are still around, but implemented in a better way. Progression is done via a skill tree this time around. So you level up, spend skill points to unlock certain craftables. Said craftables can be made at a base level. And then you go and find schematics to make quality items. These schematics will be heavily sought after. Initially, they intended to have Cradle open for 2 days and then move to Canyon. That switched. We ended up doing Cradle for 24 hours and then moved to Canyon the next day. I think that scheduling makes a lot more sense. It locks players up to be able to build up before a move, and then doing a weekly release of every new map after that with its own associated event map is perfect. So the first week, our current week, we have canyon maps and ancient city event tiles. And then this coming Friday, I'm assuming, or Saturday, probably Friday and Saturday, we get Vol Canyon maps and Sleeping Giant event tiles. And then the following week after that, we get Cali Spire and Asteroid and Worm event tiles. Wipes are intended to be 8 weeks, but I think a month is a lot smarter. The test is intended to be 5 to 8 weeks, but that may change depending on how the test goes. The official Season 6 will come out shortly after the test is completed. All maps have a cap. You have a 6 cap, 12 cap, and 25 cap currently. They will implement it.
I'm gonna ding 75 BST. I worked so hard for this.
Why do these caps matter? Well,
yeah,
there will be nerfing involved towards the player, especially.
It's just some meaningless thing, but
a group is breached the Walker crew and Walker power cap. Overcap temporarily decreases the Walker engine power by 25%. By exceeding the max allowed crew size for the walker or the total number of walkers on the map owned by your clan. Automatons count as crew members as well. So basically, bigger number doesn't necessarily mean better person. With soft points implemented, it's going to boil down to better builds, better plays. Along with those changes of soft points coming to walkers, they've changed everything else. This means the armor, the damage taken, the damage given, the speed, the rotation speed of certain things, the center of gravity, so we don't flip as easily, but we still flip, but don't worry, the chaos of driving a walker is still there. We have the module system still, however, it is done a little differently. We have to find the components for said modules, so like gaskets, pinions, bearings, etc., and craft said module at an ancient fabricator. This brings back that sort of fragment tab game loop, but in a much more meaningful way. Modules are essential to have a really good walker. If you want to be able to farm easier, last longer in a battle, move better, whatever your need may be, you're going to need modules. Some modules require 10 to work, those being typically the farming modules, like Lumberjack or Forager. We can now scuttle our walkers, so we could find a walker we don't want anymore or want to get rid of, so we can free up slots or points on set tile for our clan or ourselves. we can literally blow up the walker. There are some changes to the proxy walker. Added to cargo and hatched to proxy walker to work as a PvP walker.
Here it comes. I'm gonna ding.
It works differently now.
Oh yeah, guys, I got 75. Took so long. Took so long. Yeah. I'm doing so good. I'm doing so good. I'm in the most successful corporation in high sec. One of the more successful corporations in E, but no, they're not that big. But one of the more successful corporations, like the most successful corporation in high sec. One of the bigger ones in Eve. I'm in like a 150 man LS on Final Fantasy, and that's brand new, and I've been enjoying every moment of it. These people are wonderful. I've not had a problem with any of them. I think I love my LS already. I think they're wonderful people, and I'm doing so good. Bless the rando guy that just invited me when I was sitting in fucking you know, in the labyrinth, you know? I was just sitting in the labyrinth like killing like leeches, just minding my own business, playing Mortal and shit, and suddenly I was like, oh wait, I'm gonna ding 75, and he was like, yeah, come party, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ding 75. It was sweet. I didn't know if the party was gonna be good. It was good. It was so good. I could have ravioli. It's getting late. Well, okay, I'm gonna go to 4 a.m. because I think 4 a.m. is a pretty good time. I never dreamed I would have 2 75s on this server, much less. Well, I set out for 3 though. I was like, I want to do Black Mage, White Mage, and BST, and maybe Red Mage.
So apparently, now you must maintain the proxy in movement throughout the tile. And if someone wants to take it over, they have to do a race around the tile with you and fight you. All of the maps have been reworked. They're loot sites, Rubu behavior based on map tier. So like you'll experience really brain dead Rubu on the cradle, but then you'll experience absolute chaos over in the canyon maps, and it's only going to get more chaotic from there. So that's when really good plays or group gameplay come in handy. Harvesting has been reworked. Just the whole crafting cycle in general has been reworked. It takes no time at all to be able to get mats to get on your feet. You can hop on and 20-30 minutes later you're rolling in a kit and you've got at least a spider logger, if not better. There are new point of interests.
Not me, I don't know the game.
Despawn timers at point of interests. There are 4 new point of interests that are events on each of the main tiles. On canyons, we have Totem of Power. On Cradle, we have Ancient Camp. On Volcanion, we have Shaman's Pit. And on Kali Spires, we have Ancient Towers. All of which give good loot and are a draw for PvP, naturally. We've talked about a lot of good points of PvP. Because this is a PvP game that is skill-based, but there is PvE elements. There are new creatures. So they've added the Go-Go, which is a giant crab, essentially just a bigger Occam. They've got the Koa mobs, or they're the giant elephants. And those 2 mobs are going to have regular and war mob form. There's going to be new spawn locations for the mobs. Not sure what those are. They reworked Femk. There's new Rubu camp variations, and they look good. And there's a lot more spawns of them. There's a giant Nur now. Tile owners can have rideable Nur. Only tile owners can have rideable Nur. Mountable Nur are in Last Oasis now. Killing have been removed, so hopefully they intend to make those mountable later on. The Frog, or Pog, have been shrunken down, and I've yet to see it. I'm not sure where its spawn is. I'm assuming the event tiles, like for canyons, we're gonna get ancient cities, so I imagine the Babak are over there. Or maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, we'll find out. Crafting has been reworked altogether, but the main takeaway is that it has been rebalanced as far as recipes and costs, and it's on a tiered system. So you have tier, what I'll call tier 0 is like levels 1 to 15, and then 15 to 30 you've got tier 1, and then 30 to 45 is tier 2, and then 45 and up is tier 3. And those things are level locked in the skill tree. Keep that in mind when you're unlocking things as you level up. That does not remotely cover everything in the patch notes, but I think those are the most important things to take note of. If you want to take a look at the patch notes yourself, the links are down below. I'm also likely live at this point. If not, we'll be later today as of watching this, because I'll probably be streaming every day. So if you have questions, drop in. Latency in chat's a little slower on YouTube, but you get a higher resolution. I'll be on both Twitch and YouTube.
On October 27th of 2021, a user named Carl92 posted a 17-second clip of a mystery song to the song identification website, What's That Song? He described it as mid-80s.
No, I've heard this one.
Hello friends, and welcome back to our series on the story of Dwarf Fortress. In the first episode we talked about the prehistory of the game, and in episode 2 we focused on the 16-year period in which the ASCII version of the game was being given away for free. Today we're going to talk about the process of bringing Dwarf Fortress to Steam, a journey that would require them to work on fundamental aspects of how this game was presented, mainly the graphics, UI, and audio, all while retaining its complex systemic core. And we're also going to explore what happened in the exciting hours, days, and weeks after launch. But before we get to the exciting ending, to get the game on Steam, Zach and Tarn were going to have to do something that they were historically not very good at: asking for help.
Kind of like this undercurrent of putting Dwarf Fortress on Steam has been there since I met game industry people, because they're all kind of like, you could just put this on Steam and it'll change your life, you should consider it. When we actually had the health problem strike and stuff, we're like, okay, we have this bug, planted in our head about this stuff, and we do have this road out. Right?
He has a comfy chair.
So we're not going to hire anybody. We can't do that. That requires knowledge about business stuff, paperwork, becoming an actual independent developer. Things that this is people we know do this stuff, but we don't do this stuff, and it seems to be a thing that requires some skill and knowledge and being like an actual person who does this kind of thing.
I first learned about Dwarf Fortress early on in Kickboxing.
Yeah, we're just gamers.
Life, just as an oddity that a friend of mine was really enthusiastic about. He taught a Saturday workshop for 6 hours, teaching me and other friends how to play Dwarf Fortress. Honestly, I didn't boot it up again after that, because it was just the cognitive load of trying to remember how to enable the mods and how to play the game. It was just a little bit too much of a barrier for me. We also had a mutual friend through Keppa of Rocket Cat Games, and then he said, I have this friend Tarn, I think you'd get along really well. Will you be cool? He made Dwarf Fortress. And we decided we'd do a GDC talk together, talking about procedural generation, algorithms, design. And that led to Tarn and I, we did hit it off. We were friends. I pitched him. I was like, Tarn, you have an incredible game. I can't be the first person to tell you this, but you should really sell this game for $20 on Steam. And I definitely was not the first or probably the 100th person to tell him that. But I was the first person to tell him that I guess he trusted, that had a company that could do the things that would help him do those things. And he really wanted to make sure that there was a noticeable quality upgrade for the $20 price tag. He wanted to make sure there were graphics on it and sound. And I think we both were like, so are you serious about this? Like, are you ready to actually do it? I think we signed the agreement in early 2018, and then we announced it immediately because we were terrified that his deeply passionate community would somehow hear some sort of rumor and go off the deep end into mutiny, revolution. I mean, it was already a little bit fragmented, but like, I mean, this is some people's lives, right? Like, they do almost nothing but play Dwarf Fortress, so they're understandably very attached to their vision of what it is, what it should be, who Tarn is, and his values, and we were both very sensitive to the kind of totally normal impression that Kit Fox was swooping in to take advantage, and Tarn was selling out, and Kit Fox is this evil predator or something like that. Which I do think that there's an alternate dimension in which that definitely was the dominant narrative among the fan base, but thankfully we took a lot of proactive steps around not allowing that to be the discourse. Essentially, Tarn and Zach make the game, and I help find people to assist them in that, and that's it. And then the other part of it, of course, is marketing, community management. So Tarn and Zach already had their own community on the Bay 12 website. They already had their own Twitter, and all of us were active. And actually, I don't think enough people give them credit for the amount of active community moderation they were doing. But Tarn was putting in, and Zach were putting in hours and hours every month into their like Patreon rewards and their communications, and they have Fortress, the future of the Fortress every month, and like there's all these things that solo developers typically neglect, because you just don't have time, because you're busy in the game. But Tarn and Zach have always prioritized communicating and being visible, and like that's a lot of work.
That relationship worked out exactly like we wanted it to. I mean, they were able to secure several artists. We had at least 5 people doing art on the game total. We had at least 3 people doing music. We had some QA community testers coming from our community, and ultimately. One of the big modders became a programmer on the game, although that happened after the release.
With the support of Tanya's team at Kit Fox Games, the development of the Steam version of Dwarf Fortress began. Kit Fox built a support team around the brothers, texture artists, QA folks, musicians, and audio experts. A veritable assembly line of digital artisans helping to convert 16 years worth of development into something resembling a traditional-looking game. The work wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be particularly fast either.
For 3 years, we've been making the game like more accessible to everyone, and that means like redoing the entire interface. Before it was just ASCII, just letters and numbers on the screen, and now there's actual pictures. And with that, though, the interface was complete garbage, along with the matrix that you'd have to decipher. You'd have to use WASD to move around, or no, it wasn't even WASD at that time. It was like UKLM or something. It was worse than that, and you would have those key clusters to move in one menu, and then you would have another cluster of keys that's just no reason. It's just you have to use a different keys to move in a different menu, and this was all terrible. And for the last 3 years, we've been working with artists to make it decipherable, and ourselves to make the user interface capable of being run by normal humans.
We have a streamer who's been streaming the game for at least a decade, right?
Blind.
And there's this log, a chronological log, just kind of like, on the 6th we added the sutures, and on the 7th we cleaned the surrounding wound area, and on the 8th the patient was discharged, or something like that, right? And that was buried in the old version. That was buried 6 menus, key presses in, or something, just deep down where this person didn't find it.
Wow.
They just didn't know it was there, because how do you investigate this web of menus, right? And then in the new version, before we even released on Steam, we had that now just up in like a tab on a second menu, because there's so much more kind of space and mouse presses and stuff. And we just showed it off. We're like, hey, look at this cool thing. And they were like, I didn't even know that existed. Is that new? And we're like, no, it's not new. It's been there forever since we added hospitals.
We added things like whether the dwarves are happy. Now there's a little line of smiley faces and a number that tells you which dwarves are happy and how well your fortress is doing. Like the character sheets, that's completely new. Now you bring up the character sheets of dwarves, and it tells you like everything about his thoughts and all that stuff. And that was in menus before. I think you had VPL was how you'd arrange their profession, like what they're allowed to do. And now you don't even do that anymore. Now they just do the job that makes the most sense for them to do. And then before that was a mess.
What was VP and L doing? V was like...
It was view the dwarf, P the preferences, I believe, and then L for labor. So what is the preferred labor you want them to do? But most of the time, this is so bad that most of the time these letters don't represent anything. It's just a random letter to get you into a different part of the menu.
The art, I think, it must be in the tens of thousands of sprites at this point, because I mean, it's a little bit cheating, right? Because what ends up happening is that for a chainmail shirt, you need like versions of that chainmail shirt. Like you need 5 different, slightly different ones for quality level. You need a different one for elves and dwarves and humans and kobolds and whatever. You need different ones. Now, I do think that they cut down on the number of sprites by making it palletized. There's a lot of things that the color will dynamically change depending on the material it's built with. But it's always growing because, you know, I asked Tarn and Zach recently, I asked them, you know, shouldn't we wind down the artists a little bit, like, until we have another big update? And they were like, no, but there's infinite things they could work on. They could work on the giant baby versions of all the animals, right? Like, what is a giant baby anteater or a baby giant anteater? I think those are 2 different things. I said, so you want sprites for those? And they said, well, why not? And I couldn't give them a good answer. So I said, all right, I guess we have art forever. And that's fine. And because then you need zombie as well. You need giant baby zombie animals.
And then here's all the babies. So we got that's ridiculous. Okay, yeah. Sometimes this artist takes the liberty to make things cartoony, like with the worm man. They have a little bow tie and stuff like that, and we're just like we go with it every time. So we're going with it. Look at that rhino baby. And then there's a little hippie baby, and then the spider monkey baby, and the white stork. So we've done all of the baby animals now. We've had Neo Rice's Good drawing baby animals for weeks now. And I just sent them the last, aside from one, last 3 sheets, which are the aquatic creatures, the large aquatic creatures and the giant aquatic creatures. And the mer people are in that set, and we're asking for 4 mer people pictures, because mer people are one of our, like most of our aquatic creatures are like a shark or something, right? But mer people, we have 2 gender pictures for them. And so we need children and babies, because they're kind of humanoid, you know, so the most humanoid creatures, even like the cyclopses and giants and stuff, like the intelligent humanoid type creatures, get a baby and a child, whereas most animals get just a young version. And so that's why we have these like cyclopes, or how do you say the plural in Greek? I have no idea. And these ettins with like pacifiers and diapers walking around too, because they have a baby version. And there's the Minotaur, there's a little Minotaur, like nose ring pacifier thing. So it must have been at this phase at one point, it's like the baby Minotaur phase before they threw it in the labyrinth. And so I don't know what we're gonna get. That's like something that could be sitting on my Discord right now, is like, what do the mer babies look like?
But there won't be any harvesting of mer baby bones.
People have probably figured out how to do that, so I'm afraid there probably will be, but it won't be official vanilla behavior. But yeah, I mean, it's like veal or something, right? Mermeat.
Mermeat.
So let's look at some of these fantastical creatures and see what the interpretations were. So there's a jabber, there's a little jabber chick. And the little cave crocodile. That's good. The blind cave bear is sitting there.
Is it cool to see work getting done? It's like you didn't have to do it. It's like free work in a way. Like it's not free. But...
Yeah. No, it's a whole different feeling being like, I guess, like we were saying, art director, project lead, that kind of thing, and just watching people do their thing, doing a thing that you could never have done. Like even if we were like training as pixel artists for 8 years. Like we'd get better at it, but we wouldn't be producing this, right?
We also earned 3 of ourselves.
Yeah. It's amazing. So we did what was probably a reasonably smart thing, and set an October 26th deadline to lock the game down, which isn't actually how it turns out, but at least you can kind of get it kind of locked down by then. So the artists weren't under any particular stress. Music was done. Most of the coding that needed to be done was done. We had a pretty chill, lead up to launch, and just pressed the button, and everyone just kind of relaxed when we did it. We had a little party. We had a little group call, and the Kit Foxers had their little champagne glasses out and stuff, and it was a nice moment. No panicking or anything, and then you just kind of watch what happens after that. And...
Aww.
By the time the boys had worked on the Steam version, they were experts at making this game. Not only that, they were also supported by other developers who were themselves knowledgeable about the world of Dwarf Fortress, how it should look, how it should sound, the bugs that are likely to arise. Even though they were planning to sell Dwarf Fortress, the classic mode without the updated sound and graphics was still available to download for free on Bay 12 Games' website. In fact, the team has continued to keep parity between both the free and paid versions of the game to this very day. They did everything right, but this was new territory for any game's release. How would a title that had been available for free, and arguably still was, sell in 2025? Were there new fans willing to give it a go? Or was the success of Dwarf Fortress destined to be one of a cult classic? A game which had gotten the attention of the Museum of Modern Art and the New York Times, but ultimately didn't have an audience.
Sales numbers, you get an hourly draft that you can actually watch, and you can see the countries wake up and stuff, the ones where you're popular, and it just looks like a sine wave. And so, yeah, we knew immediately that the game was being fairly well received, also because the, like every half hour or so, the global and country-based, like, sales lists will be there, and we're, like, #1 globally for a few days or whatever, and, well, you know you're doing pretty good when you're outperforming every other game on Steam.
Hells yeah!
Within 24 hours of the release of the Steam version of Dwarf Fortress, it had sold 160,000 copies. They'd almost double this by the end of the week. And 4 months after launch, 600,000 units of Dwarf Fortress had been sold. Most fans watching the launch hoped that it would sell enough to help the brothers gain more financial stability.
Hello and welcome to my beginner's guide for Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode. This is being made with the beta version of the adventure mode. That means a lot of things are not activated yet, but I found myself that the things that are available right now are just about enough to give you a good spin into the game and give you enough things to explore the world on your own with. So first off, you have to create yourself a world. How you want to do this is up to you. You can select the specifications however you want it. You create the world, and as soon as it is saved, you can access it via Start New Game in existing world. So it will show up somewhere around here. We're going to select one world for this endeavor. This one here, it'll load up then. Depending on the size of your world, that can take a while or less. So, as a rule of thumb, if you are bothered by long waiting times, I strongly recommend smaller worlds. These are still large enough to explore. So, we select Adventure Mode, and then we get to select what kind of destiny we want to pick. Since we are raw bloody beginners, we're picking up easy difficulty, and the destinies aren't activated yet, so I can't say much about it. Hero is the easier one compared to ordinary, and Chosen will be the easiest one with a full-on tutorial, but for now we're working with hero and easy difficulty. So race-wise, we're going to play the tutorial with the Goblin race. This is because goblins do not need to eat or drink. This is really making things a lot easier.
Goblins don't need to eat or drink.
Species have bodily functions that they need to take care of. The goblins, they're just walking balls of evil, and that is what we're utilizing here. Feel free to pick up whatever you want, but this is, my humble opinion, the easiest way to play adventure mode if you have no clue about what you're doing. So we select from where they come, and if you can't select goblins, you just have to re-roll a new world, because you always get to work with what's in the world, and if there are no goblins to work with, you can't select them. So if that happens, just do yourself a new world and roll yourself a new world, and that'll be the trick. So we select where we come from. Next step, we can select which settlement we originate from. It's not that important. You can select whatever you want. For now, we're going to pick up that. an occupation that you've been following for. All these things are for now mostly fluff, of course. Maybe the goblins call it fluff. I don't know. We're picking up an occupation, whatever. It is really not that important. This is where things get important. So the distribution to have an easy life is a fighter's distribution, and here goes. You want to put in a few points into strength and agility. Strength lets you hit harder, which is really important. Agility lets you dodge better, which is also really important. Some points into toughness and endurance to make sure that you don't keel over on the first blow. Recuperation, I think, is very, very important, because if you ever get injured, you want to heal up as fast as you can, because nothing's more boring than lying around. The other stats that are really good to have are spatial sense, that allows you to dodge better, and kinesthetic sense, that's also for fighting. Intuition is the last thing that we pick up, because intuition is also really, really good for dodging, and, well, the rest you can just want to. This is by no means the perfect distribution, but this ends up with a pretty solid fighter. You can try and experiment around to your own liking, of course, because as you see there, I've explained what these stats are good for. Do your thing and have some fun with it. So over here we have now skill points remaining. So I'm going to roll this as a swordsman, because swords in Dwarf Fortress hit the sweet spot as a jack-of-all-trades weapon. They can stab and slice. They merely lack blunt damage, but since you can't even use pummel to strike as source of blunt damage, you're not completely out of options here. But in all honesty, if you want blunt damage, you need to pick up a hammer. But all in all, swords are pretty good all-rounders. Anyways, you can shoot whatever weapon you like. I just want to explain.
I'm in a good mood. I got 75 BST. Oh yeah.
Swimmer 2 levels and climber 2 levels. So we are pretty good around the world to just travel. Fighter is another trait that we want to have. It generally improves your fighting stats. It's making you dodge more and hit better. It's really, really valuable. Then a few ranks in shield user, armor user, and dodger. So the more points you can put into these, the more effective you will go. What's really important though is that you pick up at least adequate swimmer, and because as far as I know, that's the minimum value you need to be able to train it, because below that you will just drown instead of stop to drain swimming. So beyond that, well, the world is your oyster. You can pick up whatever skills you want to pick up. Currently, in the current state of affairs, there's really nothing else worth picking up, because I haven't found anything. Let me know in the comment section if I'm missing anything there, because I really like to have completeness on my tutorials. So we're picking up as many points, try to spend as many points as you can, and the more points you can allocate into these combat skills, the better. Generally here, these things on the right side can be learned much faster than the stuff on the left side. Gaining attributes in Dwarf Fortress takes quite a lot of time, and therefore this is harder to learn, this is easier to learn. So we accept these, and we can now randomize how lovely we look, randomize a couple of skin colors or whatever is tickling your fancy, and then you can select what kind of personality you want to have. I truly don't know if this has too much of an influence in the current version of the game, but well, feel free to experiment around with it and to roll the goblin that you like. And then we get into the equipment screen. So the first thing that we do is that we remove copper gear, because copper gear sucks. This is really not good enough for us. We're going to go over into the weapons tab, and here select what is the best for you. You should definitely go for short swords, because you are a small person, so don't pick up too large weapons. And iron is absolutely the lowest standard that you should pick up if available. If available, you can even consider picking up steel, although I think iron is currently pretty much the sweet spot. If you can't get iron, bronze does the job pretty well too. So we're picking up sword, that's really important. We are picking up now body wear, A mail shirt and a breastplate can be worn together, that is no problem. We pick up ourselves a helmet, gauntlets, and low boots or high boots, depending on your own liking. As far as I know, the high boots do have a little bit more armor, and then chain leggings or greaves. I still don't know, but I think the leggings have a little bit more armor value, but correct me where I stand wrong. The Dwarf Fortress combat system is a pain. So, we have now all the basics together. Since our good friend the Goblin doesn't require any food or drink, you could even remove the food from your starting package. So you can now spend the remaining points either on improving the quality of your gear by pressing these buttons here, or by hiring yourself a mount or pet that you can't use. I personally would recommend you to go for the improvement on your gear as much as you can stomach, because quality on armor does play a big role in Dwarf Fortress, a really, really big role. If you want to experiment with animals, feel free to. There's no real best choice to go for. And if you can get yourself something, I forgot one thing. I think in the bodywear section, you can also pick yourself up a cloak. Ah, well, I think cloaks are a thing, yeah. Let's try that out. But the layering of different gear items is a science for itself. We are here for a beginner's campaign. This goes places. We're pretty well equipped here. So, accept your equipment or choose your own pet if you want to. I am not that fond of this topic, so I'm going to swap it out for now. As a beginner, we're not going to pick up extra party members. We're just going to get started with our solo adventure. So, you always start in the community that you're originating from. So you can now command your character with the numpad, make sure numlock is on, and you can also command your character by just clicking on squares with the left mouse button. So every person around you is talking, as you see there. You can press space button to just flick away the thingies there without moving yourself. Right click one of the inhabitants here to start conversations with people or continue the conversation. So when we go into the
it's just not my style of game. It's funny. I look at it every once in a while. I'm like, can I play that game? Because it looks really good. Then I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I'm surprised I was able to do Caves and Cud as it was. I used an entire 10 charges of my ring. I got from 74 to 75, which is sweet. It is pretty good. Well, 74 and a half to 75. Man, I should cap out White Mage next. Those are the 3 rolls I would do in stuff like Salt or Conquest. I don't know. Maybe I should save White Mage for Tau launch. I don't know. Then I'll have something to level. I'm going to buy Club Skill.
Conversation menu, we enter the most intricate beast of procedural generated conversations that I've ever seen in my life. So when we reply to the greeting of this person now, you get opted out of that screen. That is a little bit weird. You have to right click again and continue the conversation, and then we can ask for a couple of things, or we can start a new conversation by greeting the listener and continuing the conversation. And this screen here allows you to do a lot of different things. First and foremostly, you can ask for directions or rumors, which will be added into your map. You can ask for the local ruler, and once it is added into, you can also start trading with these people. Currently, this is not enabled, otherwise I would obviously include it into a beginner's tutorial, but yeah, I'll do that once it is all available. This is also where you can trade. You can also ask the people to join you, and many other things. There's even stuff like telling them jokes or bragging about your violent acts. Feel free to experiment around with it. Currently, the most important thing to do here are, as far as I have noticed, you can swear fealty to the local leaders. So if you ask where the local leader is, you can join the local bandits camp, or you can try to be a performer for the local castle. All those things can be done at the local ruler, and the people will give you directions there. Or you try to rack in new rumors that will help you to navigate the world. So that is that. I'm going to go over the traveling menu in a second, because we pretty much have covered this here. There is not that much more to know. Feel free to experiment around with this. After all, it is a sandbox game. So down here in that corner, we have our character sheet, where you can find out everything about your character. And by pressing I or this backpack icon, you get to check out what you're currently wearing. And yeah, stuff that you pick up will have to go into a container. Otherwise, it'll block your hands from carrying a sword or a shield. So make sure that you have backpacks and stuff like that. Containers also have to be worn, so backpack is a good thing to go. Don't try to go without a backpack, please. So we don't have a log available yet. Movement options, that is very important too. So here we set up how we are currently moving. Keep it at walking whenever you just want to casually scroll around, and change it according to your situation. Sprinting when you want to run away, creeping when you want to sneak up to somebody. Just keep in mind that stuff like sprinting is really exhausting for your character, and ultimately you will fall flat on the face. So we can also stand next to surfaces and use the climb and use the climbing menu, so we can hold ourselves to terrain and or release the hold. I still have to experiment around what to do with that. We can look for bugs, but and we can jump. Jumping is pretty nice to have, as you can see here. You can do that. And here are the talking things or performance things. not necessarily important for us now. What is important is that we can here designate an attack, capital A as a hotkey, so you have to stand next to the person, press this button, and then you get asked if you really want to start a conflict with a peaceful person. We press no for now. You can also start or continue active wrestling, currently not available. You can shoot with this, but here, this is really important. Here you can yield to the conflict, or so here we have now a submissive posture, or we turn that off. Can be sometimes useful if you want.
It's too technical. It's weird, but you know, like I took another look at it. Yeah, because he probably doesn't really like you, Jonah Hill. I don't like you, Jonah Hill. It's weird.
Looking for games that will keep you on the edge of your seat with fast action, unpredictable worlds, and endless fun? These are the best 3D roguelike games of 2024 that every gamer should check out. Let's explore the must-play titles of this year. The first one is Inkbound, a game created by Monster Train. It mixes magic, strategy, and combat in the mystical Athenium, where stories come to life. You'll face off against ink-powered enemies and build up your character with unique abilities every time you play. The game's turn-based combat is fast and tactical, and the 4-player co-op makes it even more fun with friends. While the art style might not be for everyone, the exciting gameplay and creative mechanics definitely make Inkbound worth your time.
How is that 3D? It's isometric.
Which shakes up the tower defense game with roguelike mechanics. Before each battle, you build mazes using tetramino blocks, which adds a cool layer of strategy. You'll find all kinds of towers, like poison-spewing ones, or towers that rely on luck, like a giant D20 dice. Every run feels different with new maps, towers, and abilities to unlock. While the gameplay can get a bit repetitive after long sessions, the constant unlocks and strategy options keep it fun and interesting. Moving right along, we have Gatekeeper, a fast-paced shooter where you're on a cosmic quest to recover the stolen heart of the universe. This game really shines with its totem system and a wide variety of the planets to explore. Plus, there are over 100 artifacts to collect, and they totally change the way you play each time. Whether you're playing solo or with up to 4 players in co-op mode, the action never gets old. It's more about the adrenaline rush than storytelling, but Gatekeeper delivers solid, non-stop excitement. For the strategy lovers out there, The Last Flame is a must-try. This 3D roguelike mixes auto-battler mechanics with deep strategy as you recruit heroes.
Thank you, Games Puff. I'd like to sub to your channel.
To survive ever tougher maps. With over 55 heroes, hundreds of items, and 5 different origins, each run feels fresh. It can be tricky to get the hang of at first, but once you do, the game's depth really shines. If you love strategic games where every decision counts, The Last Flame will keep you hooked. Now, if you're into deck building games, Spell Rogue might just be your new obsession. Released in early access, it takes the best parts of games like Slay the Spire and Dicey Dungeons, but adds a twist by using dice to cast spells. With over 200 spells, 80 artifacts, and tons of enemy types, every run is a new challenge. Even though it's still evolving, with plenty of updates to come, Spell Rogue is already packed with fun. If you're a fan of deck builders, this one's a no-brainer. For something a bit more chaotic, let's talk about Maniac. Imagine the mayhem of Grand Theft Auto mixed with the non-stop action of Vampire Survivors, and you've got Maniac. You play as one of 6 wild characters, like a crazed clown or a drunken Santa, and wreak havoc in a top-down open-world setting. Each run is a fast-paced 20-minute burst of destruction where you dodge the cops, blow things up, and cause total chaos. It's a bit repetitive, but if you love mindless fun, Maniac has you covered. Switching gears a bit, Tales and Tactics is perfect for those who love strategy games. Set in a vibrant tabletop RPG world, you'll draft fae, dragons, and orcs, and carefully position them for battle in this auto-battler. The game gives you plenty of time to think through your moves, so there's no rush. Perfect for strategic thinkers. As you progress, your team evolves with new synergies, perks, and gear, making each run feel unique. With its adjustable difficulty, Tales and Tactics offers a challenge for everyone, from casual players to hardcore tacticians. If you're into dark, fast-paced action, then Nevermorn should be on your radar. You play as a necromancer summoning an army of undead from fallen enemies. The mix of damage dealing and strategic corpse raising keep things interesting. While the arenas can get a bit repetitive and the graphics aren't super polished yet, the game has a lot of potential, especially for fans of Hades or Diablo. It's still in early access, so expect more updates, but Nevermorn already lays the groundwork for some seriously fun combat. Next up, we've got Ocean Keeper, Dome Survival, a unique underwater roguelike where you pilot a robotic mech and battle sea monsters. The game blends top-down isometric exploration with 2D cave diving, which keeps the action fresh. While there's not a ton of enemy variety, the upgrades for your mech and weapons make each run feel rewarding. If you're into a resource management with a side of fast-paced combat, this one's definitely worth a shot. And finally, there's Coffee Caravan, a cozy roguelike that blends cafe management with a relaxing road trip. You run a mobile coffee shop, brewing up different recipes and keeping your customers happy as you travel through a procedurally generated world. The pastel-colored graphics and chill music make it the perfect game for winding down after a long day. Plus, the roguelike elements keep each journey fresh with new recipes, upgrades, and challenges. It's a delightful pick for players looking for something a little more laid back, but still packed with strategy. And that wraps up our list. These 3D roguelike games of 2024 offer something for everyone, whether you're craving fast action, deep strategy, or even a cozy coffee break. Which one are you most excited to try? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome game recommendations.
What's going on, everybody? Mordum here, this time bringing you my next 8 reviews, because after a bit of a whirlwind start to the year, things have finally started to slow down a little bit, and I am actually at the end of my previous raft of reviews, with the only thing left being Claire Obscure, which is obviously going to be on this list because it releases in a few weeks. But seeing how I've got some time to kill between now and when the announcement shows start, usually right at the start of June, so we can kind of figure out what's going on in the back half of the year, I figured now would be a good time to give people an update, of which I usually make one every couple of months, to talk about what I've got lined up and what I'm planning on taking a look at. So with that in mind, this video is basically geared from now until, again, those announcement shows, so I can kind of see what's going on. And even then, there's still a little bit of wiggle room, which we'll get into momentarily. With that in mind, this is mostly going to be old releases, as I play through some games that I've been meaning to get around to for a while for one reason or another, as there's only 3 new releases over the next couple of months I plan on taking a look at. But before we dive fully into this, I do want to give you guys 2 maybes. Starting first and foremost with the one I know people are going to ask me about, which is the Oblivion remake. So I don't know if this is actually going to be released or if this is even going to really be a thing. I'm mostly just mentioning it purely because I know people are going to ask. Yes, I have seen the myriad of rumors and the recent update to the Oblivion Steam page that removed the trailers. And honestly, just the simple fact that Bethesda or Microsoft One hasn't come out and said it is absolutely not a thing yet is all pretty good evidence that it might actually be happening. I fully admit that, but I'm also not terribly interested in getting worked up about it until it's a sure thing. But as many people know, and the reason people would be asking me to begin with is likely because they saw my Oblivion review, they know how much that game means to me, so to put it simply, yes, if the Oblivion remake happens to come out at any point in the future, it is an immediate priority for me. If they shadow drop it, truth be told, I don't really much care about what I'm I'm actually working on at that moment, my attention would shift to Oblivion. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on what I can actually sort of plan for, which is everything else on this list, which brings me to my second sort of maybe, and that is Chains of Freedom. This is an upcoming TRPG set to release here pretty soon, actually, on I think it was like the 15th, and I played a demo of it, which I made as part of a Steam Next Fest video, I believe, and it seems interesting enough from what little bit I have played of it, but it does kind of strike me as the type of game that's either going to be pretty neat or really, really bad. So to that end, I simply don't know if I will do a full review on it, but one way...
Okay, I haven't had anything but a fruit drink today, and I need to eat. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get something. I'm going to cook some sausage and go to the bathroom. Going to catch a bio break here, guys. I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Oh. Got 75 on BST. Oh, yeah. So, what do I do? I guess I boil water. This was not what I thought. Never mind. This was crock pot stuff. Sausage and potatoes for tomorrow. And I'll put this in the morning when I go to work. So that's gotta go. Crock pot tomorrow. Gotta remember. So that changes what I was gonna do tonight. I guess I'll have a sandwich with some ravioli. Yeah. Sounds good to me. So Maybe we could get some sheets on this now. Okay, there's my dinner. Then okay. Quite good. Okay, dinner time. Ravioli and a sandwich wrap. I was gonna make sausage, but I pulled the wrong sausage out of the freezer and I didn't realize.
Or another, I will likely cover it, yes. Which brings us to everything else. So let's get on with that. Starting with first, of course, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is set to release towards the end of April and is another game I had the chance to play via a preview that was sent out to a bunch of creators, I think. I don't believe they ever made that public, though I was personally hoping they would make that a public demo. And that is primarily because I'd say the main thing I gleaned from having played that game myself already, or at least the first couple hours of it, was simply that while I think it's a really fun time for the most part, the combat is likely going to be pretty make or break for most people, but either way, I enjoyed it. I really liked the art, looking forward to playing it. Next up after that, with our sort of final new release for this video, we then have Doom the Dark Ages, which releases in the middle of May, and I'm absolutely going to be reviewing this one way or the other, but what I don't know at the moment is whether or not it will be a 100% review. This game is sort of FPS genre, of course, and while I have absolutely played and reviewed those previously with 100% and everything, Doom's a little different in the sense that it tends to have way more sort of ultra difficult challenges, and with this one having a modular difficulty while also not having any multiplayer, etc. I just don't know what 100% for this game looks like, even back from the preview I took part in. So what I'm gonna do here basically is just, of course, play the game, see how I feel about it, but one way or another, you'll either get a regular review or a review after 100%, I don't know, but there will be a review, yes. From the preview I have,
no, thank you.
Missed that video from me, to sum it up very succinctly, for the most part, it seems pretty fun. I'm a little worried about things like the dragon and the Atlan perhaps getting stale over the course of the game, but the rest of it seems like a good time. Moving on to the old releases I want to get to, though, starting with Avernum 2. If you saw my impressions video yesterday, you already know this, of course, but I've been running through the Avernum series in anticipation of the remake of the fourth entry, which is set to release later this year, Avernum being a pretty, I would say, cult classic CRPG series that's seen a surprisingly long life, but that's the case for most of the games that Spiderweb Software has put out, and I really enjoyed the first one in terms of story, so I'm curious to see what expansions and whatnot the second title can bring. But Following that, we actually have a game I'm very familiar with, which is Final Fantasy XII. But the catch here is, I have not played that game's sort of remaster called the Zodiac Age, which if you're a long time
12 is
you've heard me
wonderful.
talk about multiple times, but the gist of it is, I want to take a trip down memory lane with that one, and of course see all the changes with this sort of remastered version, which from what I understand has actually made the game easier in the sense that there's a whole bunch of helper features and things that have actually eliminated a fair bit of the grind that I remember. But I've been looking forward to diving back into this one for basically since the start of the year, actually, and I'm going to force some time in here somewhere.
I did
for this
Zitza.
one,
I love
looking
Zitza.
forward to playing it for sure. Now, on the sort of opposite end of that, we then have Horizon Zero Dawn. This is a game I have not played at all, and obviously not its follow-up either, Forbidden West, and again, I've just been meaning to get around to it for years since it came out on PC back in 2020, and I've done a pretty terrible job of making time for it. Now, I've heard that the first game was pretty good. I heard more mixed things about Forbidden West, but for the most part, people seem to really enjoy the first entry.
Forbidden West was
There's a
good.
few gripes about the open world here and there, pretty much being all the negatives I've ever really heard about it, so I'm looking forward to jumping into that one and seeing it for myself, and maybe I can get around to doing Forbidden
That's too
West
much
at some
for
point
1
as
year.
well, but
That's
either
too
way,
much you can
Horizon
do
Zero
it for
Dawn
1
looks
year
pretty
even.
cool, and it's just a game I've wanted to play forever, which is a somewhat similar case for Phantom Brigade. Phantom Brigade is a sort of TRPG that released back in 2023 that I have also done a really bad job of making time for, and my understanding is that it has a pretty unique combat system that I believe is something akin to like simultaneous turn-based, that is to say things move while you're moving and you can rewind time and stuff, and overall it just seemed pretty novel and I've been wanting to take a look at it. Second to last, though, we then have something a fair bit different, and the reasons for me going back to it are a bit different as well, and this is Bloomtown, A Different Story. A sort of retro pixel graphics title that I actually took a look at last year but never played in full, as they had released a demo. But Bloomtown effectively puts you in the role of a couple of kids trying to save their 1960s Americana town from a demonic invasion from demons that live in the heart of its residents. Ultimately, though, while I did enjoy it when I played the demo a while back, the reason I actually want to jump into it is that my son is graduating kindergarten here in just about a month or so, and he has done really fantastic this past year. And while the kid loves things like Minecraft these days, I'm wanting to try to sit down and play a video game with him, and especially, something a little more akin to what I play, which is one of these RPGs. So I thought it would be really cool if that after, he finishes up kindergarten and we get to enjoy the summer together, that I tried to sit down and play this with him. So I don't know exactly when the review for this will be done, as truth be told, if you're a parent at all, trying to schedule things around the whims of a capricious 6-year-old can be a bit difficult. But that does bring us to our final entry, and this is none other than Daggerfall Unity, which is an interesting game to approach in terms of a review, because obviously it's not going to be after 100%.
You can't completionist this.
Daggerfall is
insane,
mind-bogglingly massive, but at the same time, while that is true, if you actually look at the sort of like handcrafted content for Daggerfall, there's not much. Most playthroughs of that game, like actually finishing the story,
I'm gonna put my dishes away. I'll be right back. And then back to it.
are like 20 to 30 hours, and that is because basically everything else about it relies on procedural generation. But ultimately, this channel was by and large made by taking a look back at old, janky, weird games, and Daggerfall really fits the bill. And while I have personally played it previously a couple of times, because of the nature of that game, I haven't ever actually bothered to finish it for myself, and I thought it would be fun to simply take a look back at it as a way to both fill out my own knowledge of the entirety of what that game actually is, story-wise and whatnot, but also to give people the opportunity to take a look at it, as well as, again, doing that kind of thing is somewhat what I'm known for. But as it stands, I think that's pretty much everything I'm taking a look at over the next couple months, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you're looking forward to at least one of these reviews. There are also a couple of other games I already know that I'll be taking a look at, but aren't necessarily full releases. Like, I know there's at least one game releasing into early access here in a week or two that I want to take a look at. No Rest for the Wicked gets a big update on the end of the month as well.
Over 60 years later, we're still obsessed with John F. Kennedy's assassination, and with good reason.
Thank you, Grunge. I'd like to sub to your channel.
What really happened in Dallas that day. When historians call Lee Harvey Oswald enigmatic, they're severely underplaying just how mysterious he was. There's a lot we don't know about the 20th century's most infamous assassin. We don't know why he did it, and we don't know why he spent the weeks before the assassination hanging out in Mexico City. As Professor T. Jeremy Gunn put it to NPR, back then the city was, quote, the spy capital of the Western Hemisphere. Cuban agents, Soviet moles, and CIA operatives all rubbed shoulders there, and Oswald was among them, raises all sorts of questions.
It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle. It's not an enigma.
We do know Oswald used his time in Mexico to try and secure a Soviet visa. We don't know why the records of this are all screwed up. The day he visited the Soviet embassy just happens to be the day the CIA's camera wasn't working, so we have no pictures. We once had a recording of a tapped phone call from a guy claiming to be Oswald. A controversial former FBI director J. Edgar Hoover decided it wasn't Oswald's voice, so the tape vanished. That's before we get on to the random guys Oswald was with. According to Politico, CIA informer saw Oswald with two young Americans at a party in the city. We still haven't established their identities. All we know is that they spent a few days hanging out with a soon-to-be presidential assassin and then vanished forever. One of the spies in Mexico City at the time of Oswald's visit was June or Jerry Cobb, an Oklahoma girl who turned pro-Castro revolutionary before becoming disgusted with Cuba and turning CIA spy. Cobb was a valuable intelligence asset. Her claims were usually taken seriously, so when she followed up Kennedy's assassination by telling her CIA handlers Oswald had been seen at a Mexico City party where people joked about killing JFK, you better believe the feds listened. The story comes via Politico, and we should say here that its specifics remain shrouded in mystery. Cobb's file is still under lock and key for security reasons, so Politico's reporting comes only from related CIA and FBI files. Still, it's fascinating reading. Mexican playwright Elena Garro reported the party to Cobb, saying it was a meeting place for Cuban diplomats. Some were even joking about how useful it'd be if Kennedy was killed. Garro's information was so shocking that the FBI interviewed her in 1964. But Cobb's intel was disparaged by the CIA, and no follow-up action seems to have been taken. No evidence connecting the assassination to Cuba or the Soviets
the CIA.
surfaced, even after the opening of the KGB files. Still, it does make you wonder what exactly happened at that party and just what Oswald was doing there. Perhaps the strangest thing about Oswald is that he was under heavy surveillance by U.S. intelligence agencies after defecting from and returning to the U.S. So how was he not stopped? On October 16, 1959, he arrived in Moscow and wrote to the Soviet authorities, renouncing his American citizenship. Then, when the Kremlin rejected his overtures, Oswald tried to kill himself. That was enough to grant him a temporary stay in the USSR. The KGB shipped him off to Minsk to work in a radio factory. According to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Anthony Summers, Oswald later claimed he'd offered the Soviets information on America's U-2 spy planes.
No, sir, I am not a communist. I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
Flash forward to June 1962, and Oswald was back in the States, this time with a Soviet wife and newborn daughter. Given his history, you'd probably expect his return to be announced by dozens of men in dark glasses bundling him out of the airport and into a mobile interrogation chamber. Yet the CIA never questioned him. The FBI did question him twice after his return, and once again on August 10, 1963, after he was arrested for disturbing the peace by handing out pro-Castro flyers. But for whatever reason, a defector was given free rein to waltz around the country until he shot the president. In the video of Ronald Reagan being shot, the first shot goes off, and within a split second, the president has been whisked away while John Hinckley Jr. vanishes beneath a sea of bodies. Now compare the Kennedy assassination. The first bullet hits JFK in the throat, and the Secret Service does nothing. The second bullet is the headshot that killed Kennedy. 5 seconds passed between the two shots. A high-speed Reagan-style response could have saved the president. Driver William Greer didn't take evasive action. Paul Landis, following the Kennedy car, didn't jump on board and shield the president with his body. The Secret Service guy you see jumping onto the car in the assassination footage, that's Clint Hill, part of the First Lady's detail, fulfilling his duty to protect Jackie. Interviews with Secret Service personnel by Vanity Fair talk about a macho culture where members would refuse food and sleep and spend every night getting crazy drunk. While a no-sleep hangover would explain their inaction, it doesn't explain other weird screw-ups, like why the running boards on JFK's car were retracted, meaning there was no one to protect the president if something happened. Then something happened.
John F. Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock Central Standard Time today here in Dallas.
Following Kennedy's assassination, officials tried to trace all possible witnesses.
It was just right by us when it all happened, just right in front of us.
Many were known only by nicknames like Umbrella Man, the Three Tramps, or Badge Man. It took until the 1990s to track most down, or in the case of Badge Man, proved they probably didn't exist, and the hunt isn't over. We still have no idea who the Babushka Lady was. Known for her Russian-style headscarf, the Babushka Lady was on Dealey Plaza filming the assassination. A piece of film would be of unimaginable historical importance. People have been searching for her for decades. In 1970, a woman named Beverly Oliver surfaced, claiming to be the mystery woman. But she said she knew who really killed Martin Luther King Jr. and claimed she was recording JFK's death with a camera that hadn't been invented yet, so serious historians tend to dismiss her. That means there's someone out there with unseen footage of a major historical event who has never turned herself in. So if you're a headscarf-loving woman who was in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, your local FBI office would love to hear from you. After JFK's death, things only got weirder. The body was taken to Dallas Parkland Memorial Hospital, but it barely got through the doors before a fight broke out over who got to perform the autopsy. The local coroner was Earl Rose. Since Kennedy was killed in Texas, he felt it was a state crime, that Texas law applied, and that he was responsible for the post-mortem. According to the LA Times, however, the Secret Service and Jackie Kennedy disagreed. Things quickly got ugly.
I'm the medical examiner. This is a homicide case. The deceased can't leave until there's been an autopsy.
When Rose tried to physically block the Secret Service from the body, a heated argument broke out. At some point, Kennedy's detail simply grabbed the body. According to some accounts, guns were drawn. Either way, the outcome was the same. Kennedy's remains were transported to Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland. Likely as a result of this dispute, there's no longer any ambiguity. A 1965 code makes it clear that attempting to assassinate the commander-in-chief is a federal crime. Given its importance, you might expect JFK's autopsy was done with the utmost diligence. But not only were parts of the autopsy done in a strange way, a whole lot of crazy issues surfaced later. When you're autopsying a body, there are specific procedures you should follow. Removing and weighing the organs is one, something autopsy Dr. James Joseph Humes admitted in 1996 hadn't been done. This pales in comparison to the other things Humes didn't do. He didn't preserve the original JFK autopsy report. He made a handwritten copy, then burned the original. Humes claimed he wanted to stop the blood-stained report from becoming a source of morbid fascination. On the other hand, he failed to destroy at least one other blood-stained document.
Certain people in our government tampered with critical evidence in order to make sure the American people would not know the truth about who murdered the president.
Then there are the autopsy photos. The ones in the National Archive are low quality and don't show important details like the number of bullet wounds. When Professor Gunn showed them to the woman who developed them, Sandra Spencer, as part of his work on the 1992 Assassination Records Review Board, she said they didn't look like the images she remembered processing.
She said that the photographs that she developed had a large massive exit wound in the back of the head.
Next, Gunn tried to match them to photos printed by Spencer's lab shortly before the assassination. The photo paper was completely different, suggesting they came from a different printing session. It sometimes seems the only thing that could shed more light on what happened in Dealey Plaza that day is a deathbed confession from a professional assassin. Well, buckle up, because that deathbed confession exists.
Many strange things were happening, and your Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do with them.
In 1966, Herminio Diaz Garcia, a hitman for the Cuban Mafia, died during a raid on a prison. Before he expired, he told fellow mobster Tony Cuesta he'd been responsible for the death of the U.S. president. That's the story investigative journalist Anthony Summers tells in his book on the assassination, Not in Your Lifetime. In 2007, Summers and Robert Blakey, a former chief counsel to the House Select Committee on Assassinations, interviewed Cuban exile Ronaldo Martinez Gomez, who also spoke with The Telegraph in 2013. Gomez said he'd shared a cell with Cuesta, who told him about Diaz's confession. In fact, Diaz was in the United States on November 23, 1963, and had previously carried out 20 political assassinations. Of course, this is just one man's word, and hitmen tend to lie, but there are other bizarre Cuban connections to JFK's murder. Also in 2007, former Kennedy detail Secret Serviceman Abraham Bolden told ABC about a tip-off the service received ahead of JFK's aborted trip to Chicago on November 2, 1963. 2 Cuban men with rifles were spotted in a rented room along the motorcade route, but the surveillance operation against them was bungled and the potential assassins vanished. Kennedy was a beloved president, while Sam Giancana was a violent mobster who once worked for Al Capone.
Declined to answer because I honestly believe my answer might tend to incriminate.
Yet if you were to read books on the lives of both Kennedy and Giancana, you'd find they keep propping up in each other's stories. The coincidences add fuel to the rumors that the mafia killed Kennedy for riding hard on them. Giancana had ties to JFK's dad, Joseph P. Kennedy, from Prohibition.
The old man, Kennedy, was a very close friend of Giancana's. They were in business together in the old days, in the bootlegging business.
But the ties may have gone deeper. In 1997, reporter Seymour Hersh wrote in his book The Dark Side of Camelot that Joe Kennedy
The Dark
asked
Side of
Giancana to
Camelot.
help his son win the 1960 election. Then there's Frank Sinatra, who was friends with both JFK and Giancana. Frank's daughter Tina later claimed that her father asked Giancana to lean on the unions to help JFK win.
Let's look into The Dark Side of Camelot. I've never actually like done the deep dive on that. No, I don't want to do the audiobook, just a breakdown.
Hello, I'm Edward. Welcome to the first part of our in-depth exploration into Joseph Kennedy, a man who remains one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures in American history. As the patriarch of the Kennedy family, his influence rippled through politics, business, and society in ways still felt today. However, this saga is not just about power and prestige, but also about the dark corners and shocking facts that tint the legacy of this Camelot's king.
Welcome to our channel, Hushed Histories, revealing the secrets of bygone eras. Fact 1. Prohibition-era profiteering. Joseph Kennedy's alleged bootlegging business.
Joseph Kennedy's name has been significantly associated with the era of Prohibition. While many are aware of his prowess in business and politics, few know about the rumors tying him to bootlegging operations during the 1920s. Allegedly, Kennedy orchestrated the importation and sale of illegal liquor, capitalizing on the nationwide ban on alcohol. Accounts from his peers and associates, such as Richard Whalen and Doc Stacher, seem to lend credence to these rumors, with tales of hijacked whiskey shipments and high-class parties drenched in illicit spirits. According to Doc Stacher, a lieutenant of Meyer Lansky, Joseph Kennedy was implicated in the hijacking of a whiskey shipment from Ireland to Boston in 1927 and narrowly escaped assassination ordered by the Jewish Purple Gang when he attempted to ship his bootlegged whiskey through Detroit without proper underworld permissions.
Fact 2. The shady stockbroker, Kennedy's Wall Street manipulations.
Joseph Kennedy was a shrewd investor, known for his sharp maneuvers in the world of finance during the Roaring Twenties. His tenure at Hayden Stone and Company provided him with valuable insights into the stock market, equipping him with the tools necessary to amass his own fortune. Notably, Kennedy became infamously associated with pool operations, a practice wherein wealthy investors would manipulate stock prices for their own gain. One such operation led to Kennedy making a staggering $5 million overnight from the stock of Libby, a food processing company. However, his speculative tactics were risky, often blurring the lines between aggressive investment and manipulation. His financial maneuverings earned him a controversial reputation, further solidifying his image as a ruthless operator on Wall Street.
Fact 3. Behind his charisma, the unveiling of Kennedy's anti-Semitic beliefs.
Please stop. Please stop. You're so annoying. Oh, you're so annoying. You stop. You stop. What? He broke my fucking thing again. You are so annoying. Stay, stay. God damn it, this is the same exact level as the last one.
Kennedy's time as U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom exposed his anti-Semitism on an international scale. His support for Neville Chamberlain's appeasement strategies was rooted in his desire to prevent the U.S. from entering the war, largely due to his prejudiced views of Jews being instigators of the conflict. This bias was evident in his statement suggesting that Jews had brought it on themselves.
Oh my God.
Even after the horrific Kristallnacht attacks, Kennedy's views didn't drastically change. Instead, he hoped that the Nazis could be bribed to avoid the U.S.'s involvement in the war. His shocking plan to exile every Jew in Germany to Africa or a British or American colony, while dismissed by President Roosevelt, further emphasized his lack of empathy for the Jewish plight. Kennedy's attempts to clear his name only emphasized his prejudice, with his claim of disliking some Jews being largely overshadowed by his admission of holding a low opinion of them.
Fact 4. The controversial ambassadorship, Kennedy's stance on Nazi Germany.
This is the same
Joseph
exact
Kennedy
level.
Sr. served as the United States ambassador to the United Kingdom from 1938 to 1940, a critical time leading up to the start of World War II. His tenure was marked by controversial views and actions, particularly in relation to Nazi Germany. Kennedy openly favored appeasement of Adolf Hitler, believing that war with Germany would prove disastrous. He was even accused of defeatism when he voiced doubts about Britain's capacity to win the war against Hitler's forces. Kennedy's stance was vastly unpopular, both with British authorities and with the Roosevelt administration back home. His controversial viewpoints ultimately led to his
God damn
resignation
it,
in late
you fucking
1940,
asshole.
marking the end of his diplomatic career.
Fact 5. The Kennedy Curse, Tragedies and Conspiracy Theories.
The Kennedy family, despite their prominence and influence, have been plagued by a series of tragic events, leading many to believe in a so-called Kennedy curse. This began with the untimely death of Joseph Kennedy Jr. in a World War II plane explosion in 1944. Then, in 1963, the world mourned the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas. This was followed 5 years later by the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy during his 1968 presidential campaign. The death of John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife and sister-in-law in a 1999 plane crash, further intensified theories about this alleged curse. Though it's often dismissed as a mere superstition, the series of tragedies has fueled speculation and conspiracy theories for decades. As we conclude part 1 of our deep dive into the life of Joseph Kennedy, we are left with a striking portrait of a man who was not only a central figure in American politics and business, but also a figure shrouded in controversies and scandals. From his alleged bootlegging activities during Prohibition, manipulations on Wall Street, anti-Semitic beliefs, to his controversial stance on Nazi Germany and the series of family tragedies, Kennedy's legacy is a complex tapestry of power, ambition, and controversy. Stay tuned for part 2, where we will delve further into more shocking facts about the Kennedy patriarch.
We hope you've enjoyed the video and encourage you to share your thoughts, additional facts, or any fascinating stories about
Hello, I'm Edward, and welcome back to part
eras. Fact 6. Forced lobotomy, the tragic story of Kennedy's daughter Rosemary.
Oh.
Rosemary Kennedy, the oldest daughter of Joseph Kennedy, was subjected to a lobotomy at the age of 23 in 1941, a procedure enforced by her father. Joseph Kennedy, fearing her increasingly rebellious behavior and mood swings could jeopardize his son's
She was a lib.
Made this devastating decision.
So he
despite the fact that
lobotomized her.
Rosemary likely suffered from depression rather than the mental handicap she was diagnosed with. The risky procedure, performed by Dr. James Watts with Dr. Walter Freeman attending, involved the cutting of Rosemary's frontal lobe.
She was gay.
While she was conscious.
She was probably
and
gay.
responsive. The
So they cut
operation
into her
tragically extinguished
lobe.
Rosemary's intellectual abilities, reducing her mental age to that of a 2-year-old, and leaving
That's
her
what he did to his
incapable of
daughter.
speaking or walking properly. She was subsequently hidden away from the public eye, becoming a haunting secret within the prominent family. This tragic event underscores the historical misunderstanding and often brutal approach towards mental health treatment.
Fact 7. Marital infidelity, Kennedy's alleged affairs.
While often portrayed as a committed family man, Joseph Kennedy Sr. was well known in private circles for his numerous extramarital affairs. One of the most prominent was with Hollywood starlet Gloria Swanson, a relationship that was reportedly open and apparent, even to Kennedy's wife, Rose. Another known affair was with his secretary, Janet DeRosiers, a relationship that began when she was only 24 and Kennedy was around 60. Despite these infidelities, Rose Kennedy maintained her public image, finding solace in her faith and the privileges of her position. These infidelities weren't merely personal scandals. They significantly shaped the Kennedy family dynamics. This pattern of womanizing within the Kennedy family, set by the patriarch himself, cast a long shadow over the family's reputation.
I bet it did.
Intricate entanglements, a common love interest for Kennedy Sr. and Jr.
The affairs within the Kennedy family extended beyond the patriarch Joseph, as his sons also carried forward this notorious legacy. Marlene Dietrich, a renowned film star, found herself at the center of this entanglement, having been involved with both Joseph Kennedy and later his son John F. Kennedy. Joseph's fling with Dietrich took place in 1938 and was so open that he even flaunted her in front of his son John. In 1963, a quarter of a century later, John, then the president, managed to lure Dietrich into a dalliance within the White House's walls. When confronted about her past involvement with his father, Dietrich denied the affair, leading John to quip about his father's propensity for lying. This instance underscored the unusual dynamics within the Kennedy family, where affairs were seemingly an open secret and jealousy or rivalry was often a driving force.
Fact 9. The manipulator, Kennedy's relationship with the press.
Joseph Kennedy Sr. was a master manipulator of public image, especially through his relationships with the press. Recognizing the power of media in shaping public opinion, he strategically used it to build the Kennedy family brand. He meticulously groomed his sons, particularly John F. Kennedy, portraying them as the epitome of American ideals, charming, intelligent, and dedicated to public service. He also ensured that unfavorable news, such as the family's controversial business dealings and personal indiscretions, were suppressed or spun favorably. However, this relationship was a double-edged sword as it sometimes backfired, with the press ultimately playing a role in uncovering some of the family's hidden scandals. Kennedy's complex relationship with the media set a new precedent in political communication strategies, deeply influencing how future leaders would interact with the press.
Fact 10. Shady politics, the allegations of election rigging by Joseph Kennedy.
The 1960 presidential election remains controversial due to persistent allegations that Joseph Kennedy Sr., using his deep connections, manipulated the results in favor of his son, John F. Kennedy. One prominent theory suggests that Joseph sought the assistance of the mob to generate fraudulent votes for JFK in Chicago, effectively using the names of deceased individuals. Nixon lost Illinois by a thin margin, but suspicions of electoral misconduct extended beyond this state, reaching Missouri and New Jersey. Another intriguing claim points to JFK's 1946 congressional campaign, where Joseph allegedly orchestrated a strategy to divide votes, causing confusion among voters by introducing another candidate named Joe Russo. Joseph reportedly offered a lucrative lifetime salary to frontrunner Mike Neville to step down, and when refused, enlisted media magnate William Randolph Hearst to inhibit Neville's campaign exposure. While these allegations remained largely unproven, they substantially contributed to the perception of the Kennedys' ruthless political maneuvering. In the concluding part of our series on Joseph Kennedy, we have unveiled the darker facets of this prominent figure. We unraveled the heartbreaking story of his daughter Rosemary, his alleged extramarital affairs, the immense pressure he exerted on his children to enter politics, his manipulation of the press, and the serious allegations of election rigging. As we step away from the public image of this Kennedy patriarch, it's clear that the legacy of Joseph Kennedy is indeed shrouded in controversy and intrigue.
We hope you've enjoyed the video and encourage you to share your thoughts, additional facts, or any fascinating stories about the topic in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this captivating voyage into the world of hushed histories.
That was good.
In the Democratic primaries, JFK and Giancana also shared a mistress, Judith Campbell Exner, who said in 1988 that she arranged secret meetings between them.
I can, at this time, emphatically state that my relationship with Jack Kennedy was of a close personal nature.
The strangest part of all may concern not Kennedy's death, but Giancana's. The mob boss was used by the CIA to attempt to hit on Castro. Just before he could testify before the Senate's Church Committee about his work with the agency, Giancana himself was assassinated. There's almost no official record of Oswald's questioning by Dallas police or the FBI. The interrogators didn't use a tape recorder and had no stenographers present to take accurate notes. Records of the interrogation of the 20th century's most notorious assassin come solely in the form of handwritten notes made by the two interviewers. These notes are rough and incomplete, offering only the tiniest glimpse inside Oswald's psyche. And incredibly, we only have one set of these notes today. And that's because they were discovered among the personal belongings of former police captain J.W. Fritz in the 1990s and anonymously donated.
You killed the president? No, I have not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet.
Fritz's notes are very clear on one thing. Oswald repeatedly protested his innocence, claiming that the images of him posing with the rifle used to kill Kennedy were faked. Conspiracy implications aside, this at least suggests Oswald's motive wasn't fame or notoriety. In the decades since Kennedy's death, a whole bunch of records and important documents have vanished. The Mary Farrell Foundation maintains an online database regarding the missing records. While many of the foundation's conspiracy theory claims are unsupported, the missing records are well cataloged. Among those vanished documents are a note written by Oswald and sent to the FBI, an Army intelligence file on Oswald, and Secret Service records relating to a trip JFK nearly took to Chicago in November 1963. In addition, there's some evidence the Marine Corps, of which Oswald had been a member, launched its own investigation after the assassination, but no documents from it have ever surfaced. Perhaps even weirder is the story of the missing page from Oswald's notebook, reported in the LA Times. Historian and journalist James Reston Jr. claims Secret Service agent Mike Howard checked Oswald's apartment after the assassination and found a notebook with a page headed, "I will kill." Underneath were the names of an FBI agent, a general, and Richard Nixon. Texas Governor John Connally was also listed with a dagger drawn through his name. Reston views this as more evidence that Oswald meant to kill Connally, who was riding in JFK's car and was badly injured in the assassination. Whether his interpretation is correct or not, it's a moot point. The page was torn out after Howard handed the book over and has been missing ever since. President Kennedy's brain is missing. In 1966, it was revealed to have vanished from a secure room at the National Archives. If you think that's weird, just wait. Historian James L. Swanson wrote
Why
his
was
book,
his brain
End
at the
Days,
National
Assassination of John
Archives?
F. Kennedy, that he believed the thief was JFK's brother, Robert F. Kennedy. After Kennedy's autopsy, his brain was placed in a stainless steel container. It was kept along with several samples of brain tissue, first by the Secret Service, then at the National Archives. Being both important and utterly morbid, its time at the archives was spent under the watchful eye of JFK's former secretary. That makes its disappearance all the more mystifying. In October 1966, someone went looking for the brain and found it and all the tissue samples had vanished. The Attorney General immediately ordered an investigation. Half a century later, we're still waiting for it to turn up. So where does RFK fit in? Swanson's theory is that Kennedy's brother stole his brain to cover up the massive stew of drugs the president was taking.
Had the American public known just how sick Jack Kennedy was, he probably could not have been a presidential candidate.
According to the Telegraph, JFK was knocking back codeine, Demerol, and methadone for back pain, along with other pills for insomnia and anxiety. In July 2017, a handful of new files on JFK's death were released to the public. This was in accordance with a 1992 law that all records of the assassination had to be declassified by October 26, 2017. While most of the new files were little more than duplicates of already public material, it did contain one strange new nugget of information. From the Warren Commission onwards, the CIA publicly embraced the lone gunman theory that Oswald acted alone. But the new documents revealed that, by the mid-1970s, the CIA no longer believed this. Internally, the agency began to consider JFK's death part of a possible conspiracy, even as they continued to publicly support the theory that Oswald acted alone.
I know what it is to kill someone. You don't bounce and come this way. When you bounce and come this way, you got hit in the front.
What the CIA actually believed happened is vague and sometimes contradictory. Some agents seem to have started taking the Soviets and Cuba seriously as suspects. Others seem to have worried the killing was inadvertently related to their own work. This theory went that Oswald read about CIA assassination attempts on Castro and killed Kennedy in revenge. As Politico notes, if that proved true, it would have raised a terrible question for the CIA. Was it possible that JFK's assassination was blowback for the spy agency's plots to kill Castro?
What this indicates, and this was the judgment of the committee, is that our own people aren't as efficient as we might think they ought to be.
Whatever was really happening inside the agency, the CIA kept its concern private, even from other government agencies. Why they may have felt the need to do so is just one more oddity to add to the unexplained aspects of the JFK assassination. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the KGB files were briefly opened to researchers. Among them was a file that detailed Lee Harvey Oswald's time in the USSR. Before the files were closed again, Russian paper Izvestia reported on some of its contents in 1991. Rather than add clarity, the reports only further muddied the waters. As a defector, Oswald was of considerable interest to the KGB, yet the files reveal the Kremlin effectively thought he was useless. In the late 1950s, Oswald decamped to the Soviet Union, and the Secretive Government Security Office, the KGB, kept an eye on him. It was the opinion of the KGB that Oswald lacked the psychological profile that would have made him a useful asset. One especially noteworthy observation is that apparently Oswald was a pretty lousy shot.
And it just ends. Like, this video's over, or something I wish it would say. Yeah, you know, I don't know anything about this guy, I guess. We'll watch this, sure. Now, oh, this is a movie, though. I don't know. How long is it? Oh, I don't know. It seems like it might actually be DMCA. I don't know. I don't know. Never mind. It's fine.
On October 1st, 2017, the nation, indeed the world, was alerted to a mass shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. While mass shootings have not been unique, this particular incident was unique in several disturbing ways. But there are still lingering questions about the event, the shooter himself, and the method and ease of his being able to establish a lethal observation post far above the plaza where he randomly selected his victims. Almost every mass shooter had a motive, leaves behind clues, a statement, or a manifesto. What were the facts of the Las Vegas massacre?
Warping to Stargate.
Who was the shooter?
Warp drive.
How did he manage to transport, incorporate, and utilize all of the various weapons?
That's so much. That is so many weapons.
What
Why?
was the shooter's perceived motive?
All you need is like
such an act?
2, maybe. You're dumb.
Hello, I'm Colin.
What are you gonna do? Shoot all 5 at once? You're fucking dumb.
Welcome to this episode of
The fuck? Just use your brain, Neanderthal. Terror. That's what it's about. Terror.
Approaching Stargate.
Nearly a year after a gunman opened fire from a hotel window on 22,000 concert goers, killing 58 people and wounding hundreds of
58
others,
people.
police released their final report into the mass shooting. The mass shooter, 64-year-old Stephen Paddock,
64,
wealthy and well-known as a gambler at the various casinos, checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel Casino Resort on September 25th, 2017. Pollock drove his Hyundai Tucson SUV from his home in Mesquite, Nevada, about 75 miles northeast of Las Vegas, and arrived at the hotel around 3 p.m. Paddock was a realtor and accountant who had earned a good living as a professional gambler, earning around $2.1 million, and was treated as a VIP customer. Pollock arrived and checked into suite 32-135 on the 32nd floor, as well as booking a suite next door, 32-134, in his girlfriend's name, which is a corner area which provided a wide field of view and a clear killing ground overlooking the Las Vegas Strip. Police had completed access to dozens of security cameras that recorded Paddock's every movements from the lobby, elevator, hallway, and his many trips up and down and in and out of the hotel. The senior vice president of global security for MGM
There's
Resorts,
some kind of
which
spell
owns the
going
Mandalay
off
Bay,
right there.
Stephen Martinez said, "He was a very typical guest. He was, in our estimation, the lowest risk type individual that would come onto our property. Everything he did is what you'd expect a normal guest to do, using food and beverage restaurants, having things delivered to his room. He preferred to play video poker machines. He'd stay at that for hours on end."
I do too.
Deputy Police Chief Andrew Walsh of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department stated, "Paddock did nothing to stand out. He was just one man in a sea of thousands of hotel guests. He just looks like a middle-aged guy with a lot of luggage going up to his room." On October 1st, 2017, Paddock ordered room service, and records show that between 2:23 p.m. and 9:40 p.m., he opened and closed the doors to both suites several times. The venue far below was a concert by country music star Jason Aldean. He was the closing act of the 3-day Harvest Festival open-air concert on the Las Vegas Strip, with the greatest number of the 22,000 concert-goers located on the Strip at the Mandalay Bay. He started his show at 9:40 p.m.
Oh my god, that's him lighting up to this terrible country singer.
The festivities were then
he
interrupted
ran.
by what many people
Yeah.
thought were fireworks, but it soon became quite apparent that the
No,
sounds
that
of
was
gunfire as
machine
people
gun
ran for
fire.
cover,
I would immediately
and some
dive.
fell, killed, and many others wounded. Some people risked their own lives, using their bodies to cover loved ones and even total strangers. People began to duck and cover. Others dove atop loved ones and petrified strangers, using their bodies as human shields, as over 100 rounds had already been fired. Speculation and confusion would later take root, prompting the question, how did a lone shooter remove a window that didn't open and weighed over 800 pounds? The simple answer was that he smashed it with a hammer and shot what remained. Some were not satisfied with the answer, but the idea of the window being removed is
Why not
debunked
just
by
shoot
video
out the
and
window?
photo
Shoot
evidence
out the
from
window.
night of
That,
the shooting.
I mean,
Chief Walsh
he probably
also
opened up
said
through the window.
people went into multiple directions, not knowing where the rounds were coming from.
That's what I would do.
Then the employees inside the hotel became aware of the shooting.
Not that I would ever
Security
do
guard
something like
Jesus
this.
Campos was ending his
I'm
shift
talking
when
about,
he received a call to check out a room along
like, if I'm worried
on
about the window, I
32nd
shoot it
floor.
out, you know?
That was the last call of my night. In my
Like,
head,
from a
I
detective
was home free
standpoint.
after this. What Campos did not know at that time was that the alarm call turned out to be a nanny who had left her room door ajar. That was very fortunate, because otherwise Campos would not have discovered the source of the gunfire, and that saved more lives. Campos took the stairwell to the 32nd floor and saw a metal L bracket had been screwed to the door and door jamb, preventing him from opening it. He walked up to the 33rd floor and took the elevator back down. Photos of the L bracket indicate that it was secured to the door and door frame from inside the hallway, raising questions of how Campos was able to see the bracket in his report. Other inconsistencies within his story were brought to light, but are chalked up to the Mandalay Bay Hotel protecting its image, which isn't exactly malicious. He said, "I don't know what was going on, just simply because that's not normal. So I had to call our security dispatch." His call was transferred to maintenance engineering. Campos, who was unarmed, entered the 32nd floor hallway and heard what sounded like a drill coming from behind the doors at the far end of the hall inside suite 32-135. While the official report states that there were in fact more than 1,000 spent shell casings, only one of the many released from the crime scene show any shells at all, and they number much less than 1,000.
Approaching Stargate.
When he approached the location of the strange noise, the person who was barricaded inside the suite saw him coming and opened fire through the door. At that time, thousands of people were already calling 911, and police were on the way. Campos also said, "I was struck and I went to get cover. I had to take a moment to realize what was going on. I went to lift up my pant leg and I saw the blood coming down." Campos found safety in an alcove and radioed for help at 10:06 p.m., where he called in, "Hey, shots fired," in 32-135. Mandalay Bay maintenance engineer Stephen Shook reached the 32nd floor at 10:08 p.m. after receiving Campos's report. Upon leaving the elevator, he later said that he heard what sounded like a jackhammer as well. Campos saw Shook coming. Campos said, "I noticed him. I said, 'Get cover, it's not safe.' At that moment in time, there were more rounds being dispersed. Shook dove for cover as bullets whizzed down the hallway toward him, then he radioed for help. Shook said himself, "I thought if I don't come out of the hallway alive, I wanted to communicate for Metro Police, the first responders, to get up there because this is where the shooter is. I reported an active shooter." One of the 911 dispatchers was recorded as saying, "There are numerous reports coming in. We have 33 calls holding. It's an active shooter." Meanwhile, the bullets kept flying as Pollock, no longer dealing with Campos and Shook, returned to his deadly business. One of the police officers responding on scene was Brady Cook, and video from another officer's body camera recorded when Cook and other officers came under fire and took cover behind their vehicles. "I'm down, I got shot," Cook is heard on another officer's body cam screaming. But the confusion for the 911 dispatchers and police was understandable because they received unconfirmed reports of shooters in multiple hotels, including the Tropicana Las Vegas Casino Hotel Resort. Also, as part of the confusion, armed Mandalay Bay security guards at first thought the gunfire was coming from outside and exited the hotel in search of the shooter. They searched the area but could not locate a shooter. Also at that time, LVMP Officer Richard Cole and rookie trainee Officer Brandon Engstrom, only on his second day on the job, had both just reported for duty. As Engstrom and Cole arrived, a fellow officer radioed, "Be aware, it is automatic fire, fully automatic fire from an elevated position, take cover." According to Engstrom, it was our sergeant who had the radio on. Shots came out over the radio. So immediately he yells at us to go to our cars, get ready, and go to the concert venue.
No.
All the police arriving were already on location.
Come on. Why did you spawn me as I arrived? That's so dumb. Goddamn piece of shit developers.
Rushed up to them holding his wounded wife. According to Officer Cole, he came over to our car and he's carrying his wife, Giovanna, in his arms, and he says, "Help me, I'm a police officer." That man, Frank Calzadias, was an officer for the Salt River Police Department in Arizona. He and his wife, Giovanna, who was shot in the head, had traveled to Las Vegas for the concert. Cole and Engstrom knew that she had to go to the hospital immediately, and they drove the two to University Medical Center in Las Vegas as Frank Calzadias performed chest compressions on his wife. Cole said that as they raced to the hospital and radioed their situation, they heard that the rookie, Cook, was shot. As this was occurring,
it's getting kind of dark here, so I'm gonna stop here. Quit this game. Yeah, I am done with this. Well, no, I have one more thing I've got to do when this game logs, I guess, while we arrive where we're going. Yep, Mortals logging, and oh, and I want to go kill more dark elementals. Oh, look, that was like 12k. Dark clusters are money.
Docking permission requested. Docking permission
The
requested.
quality was good.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted. Autopilot disabled. Waypoint reached.
Why did you use the terrible sound of a record fucking going off track? Look, these things don't hurt me either.
Police located the source of the gunfire as the Mandalay Bay force conducted a full sweep of the hotel, clearing gamblers and other customers from tables and slot machines. The police SWAT team swept every floor, bursting into rooms with guns drawn and rousting guests. They told the guests to remain in their rooms due to an active shooter. When they reached the 32nd floor, there was complete silence, and a room service cart parked outside of suite 32-134 with wires coming out of it. They feared that it may be a bomb and proceeded with caution. Upon closer inspection, the officers saw the room service cart was rigged with a small surveillance camera, hidden under a plate and pointed down the hallway at them. They dismantled the overhead lights to give them cover and placed a bomb strip to the door of the suite. Setting off the charge, they breached the door and entered the room where they found Paddock, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The suite was littered with over 1,000 spent gun shell casings and an arsenal of weapons, some lying on the beds and one on the floor, others stacked in a bathtub. A small surveillance camera had been fitted over the peephole of the suite's entrance door. The officers then blasted open the door of the adjoining suite and found more weapons, which were 24 weapons in total, including an AR-15 and AR-10, with armor-piercing bullets, and with some weapons with rapid-fire bump stocks and over 5,000 unused rounds of ammunition. The official reports that followed were updated as new information was discovered, and the following was reported, such as Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo telling local TV station News 3 in June that he was doubtful a motive would ever materialize. Other factors were also in the report, such as the fact that Pollock was not a person who would have aroused any suspicion, but what emerged later was that Pollock had booked several reservations at various open events, such as the Chicago Hotel during Lollapalooza and the Life is Beautiful Music Festival, also to be held in Las Vegas. The investigation also disclosed that Paddock's computers showed that he had researched many topics and websites in preparation. The searches included open-air concert venues, Las Vegas SWAT tactics, weapons, and explosives. Also noted was that Paddock had purchased almost 60 weapons, mostly rifles, between the period of October 2016 and September 2017. The investigation also proved that there was not a second gunman. Also of interest, which deviated from most mass shooters in the past or since, was that Pollock did not leave behind a suicide note or manifesto indicating a motive. What was found was that he had detailed in a notebook standard sniper tactics, such as distances, windage, and bullet drop calculations, trajectories. As far as a motive, nothing has been proven, and the report stated that there was no evidence of radicalization or ideology to support any theory that Paddock supported or followed any hate group or any domestic or foreign terrorist organization. One factor that did emerge was that Paddock's wealth had sharply declined prior to the shooting spree, losing nearly 75% of his wealth in the previous 2 years. In September 2015, his bank accounts totaled over $2 million, according to the report, but by contrast, that amount dropped to just over $500,000 in September 2017. His losses were more than $600,000 lost to the casinos, $170,000 paid to credit card companies, and $95,000 in buying weapons and ammunition. This one factor may have been the trigger that made him plan his rampage. But there may be other factors. Paddock's brothers provided more insight. One brother, Eric, told investigators that he last had contact through text messages with Paddock about 2 weeks before the shooting. Eric believed that Paddock may have conducted the attack because he had done everything in the world he wanted to do and was bored with everything. If so, Paddock would have planned the attack to kill a large amount of people because he would want to be known as having the largest casualty count. Paddock always wanted to be the best and known to everyone. His other brother, Bruce, said that he hadn't spoken with Paddock for more than 10 years and believed his brother was suffering from mental illness and was paranoid and delusional. The third brother, Patrick, had no contact with his brother for over the last 2 decades, so any motive is sheer speculation at best. The state of Nevada classified the shootings as an act of terrorism, but the federal statute does not. But as of yet, it is still not classified as such. This becomes important because MGM Resorts International cited a federal statute in its lawsuit filed against them, arguing that the company had no liability of any kind to the victims of the October 1st shooting. The final document dumped by the FBI indicates that Paddock may have harbored resentment over how he and other high rollers were treated by casinos. This was supported by an interview in 2019 with another gambler who knew him. His gambling habits seemed to be a major issue, as he would play 6 to 8 hours a day at casinos, and sometimes as many as 18 hours a day, but not even the FBI could establish a clear motive. One female worker who knew him said that during a 3-day stay at the casino in September 2017, Paddock lost $38,000.
What?
Lawsuits were filed
on
by
the slots?
families against
Or I mean, sorry, the VLTs?
Mandalay Bay. But that was
Then you're betting
challenged in
too
court
high.
over the failure to comply.
That means you're betting like $20 hands. You're fucking stupid. There's no, you've gone too high. I would never bet more than $5 on a hand ever in my whole life. I don't think. It's just irresponsible. Fucking irresponsible.
With the federal statute on terrorism.
Oh, cool. I
MGM
finally got a, oh, I guess I didn't get these. Anson, University of Kale. Joe 1. Okay. Rodin Shipyards. Damn it, I was hoping for G, like whatever it is, but okay. Destroy the infested station. But I mean, I don't have a combat ship out here. I suppose it doesn't really matter. Yeah, accept it. Okay.
Autopilot engaged.
In Mandalay also argued that the private security company that handled the property was the party responsible.
See, like, if you get greedy and you start trying to make millions of dollars a year off gambling, you're just going to lose and you're going to end up angry. You're going to do something like this. You're going to have all that rage inside from losing all that gambling and everything. And I think, like, a good person, they cap out maybe $900 and they're done for that day. Cause look, I mean, look at that. That's like on a bad year, you're getting $365,000 a year or something like that. That's better than a doctor. I mean, it's not better than it, but it's better than some doctors, you know. And you know, you don't do this like 16 hours or 30 hours at the table or any of this other weird shit.
Approaching Stargate.
Yeah, I guess I've got to leave this there, huh? That's okay. It's shut down and it's time to go. I'm fading. I can feel it. I'm going to bed, guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Click on the cat's face to donate. Come to the Twitch or the YouTube. Give me a like, sub, or a follow. Thank you so much for your time. You know, I'm really loving Mortal, Eve, and FFXI. I'm enjoying it, so I hope you guys like that too. That's all I have for you. And yeah, and so just a reminder, I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel. It is reflected here. I'm about to post a whole bunch more videos to my YouTube channel. And getting lots of likes and subs and stuff, and it's good. And so thank you so much for the support and everything. As Twitch dies, I stop relying on Twitch, really, well, not stop relying on Twitch, but it's just like I stop worrying about Twitch, you know. It's like as Twitch dies, like, oh well, you know. So I will, yep, so that's it. That's all I have for you guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And this video will stop here. Come watch my videos.